Oh, yeah, we got to overturn.
You're listening to the E-Man, inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. It's E-Man time, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Mike the New Haven podcast. And yes, this is another volume 23 of the E-Man inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. If you haven't checked out the previous episode, that was volume 22, and that was with Ray Ruiz, who was a longtime member of 2 Truck, of course, worked in 3 Truck as well as 4 Truck at the end of his career, 16 of his 20 years in the Emergency Service Unit. Good talking to Ray, long time coming to get him on the show. It's funny, he popped up in the chat, and I said, you know what, I ought to get the guy on. I reached out. Thankfully, he said yes. And ended up being a really good episode. I'm sure tonight will be a really good episode for volume 23 with somebody who, like Ray, is also frequently in the chat. And finally, the roles reversed. He's out of the chat. He's not going to be in the chat tonight. Why? Because he's on the show. And, of course, the education of an E-Man can vary. And for my next guest, that education came in Harlem's hot and heavy Truck 2, where the action is intense and the work is constant. 12 years in E-Man, he switched out from that unit in the mid-90s, becoming a member of the Joint Terrorism Task Force, hunting down and gathering pivotal information on terrorists from that period until his retirement, of course, in the winter of 2002. And that for this volume 23 of the E-Man inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit is one Pat Pogan. Pat, long time coming to finally have you on the show, and here we are.
Thank you, Mike. Great being here.
Great having you, and I see a lot of you in the chat already, and hello to you. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll get to your questions if you have any, and just another disclaimer, much like the previous night when I had Ray on, I will say the Game 5 tonight, the winner-take-all Game 5 for the Yankees starts in about an hour, so if you see the inner machinations of my mind come out and you see me start to have smoke coming out of my ears, you know why. And Steven Stefanakis, and good to see you, Steven. Our condolences to you. Our thoughts
Stevie,
are with
sorry
you.
About your dad, brother.
Yeah, good man, Chris Stefanakis. 92 good years, and he certainly raised you well. And I'm sure, was definitely proud of the man that you've become. He says, E-Man time is the best time. Patty's one of the best. And he says we forgive him for leaving E-Land.
Well, since he's on, and I know it's a tough time, I was going to save that picture, like I said, Mike, but now we got to put it on of Steph with a full head of hair. All right? It goes back. I'll hold it up on the screen there. You tell me if you got it. It looks like you got it.
Move it a little closer.
Okay.
And move it up a little bit because you're kind of a little bit more to. There you go. And wow. That is it.
Steph, that's when you had hair, brother.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I can't, you know what, but he wears bald well. I will say some guy, and I'm not saying that just to boast smoke.
Here's another one with 2 other guys that you definitely got to get on.
Yep. Is that Mark DeMarco?
Mark DeMarco and Jurgensen. Yep,
Tommy Jurgensen. I tried to get Mark on the show. Unfortunately, I couldn't get him. But yeah, I definitely would love to get Mark if he ever changed his mind. And Steve says, love you guys. Love you too, Steve. Good man, Steve. And John Latanzio's tuning in. He says hello,
there
everyone.
He is.
And Ray Ruiz is here already. So, good to see you.
Hey, brother Ray.
John, Ray, and Steve. I'm sure many other E-Men. Billy Kennedy, too. He's also here.
What's up, Billy?
And they were all, John and Ray and Sergeant Kennedy were on previously. Stefanakis, I want to get and see, even though he's active, I think I could get him. So let's see if we can work that out eventually. So we'll get to before we get to your career, actually, tell me, you grew up, it's interesting, around both jobs. When I say both, the fire department and the police department. So tell me where you grew up and your exposure early on to both departments.
Well, I grew up in Belrose and Queens, and my dad was on a job. So I was exposed that way and stuff. He was in the harbor unit. He retired when I was 10 years old, but his belief, he was a World War II vet. He was a hard hat diver in World War II, and he came out of the war, and he moved in with my uncle in Queens Village and stuff. And at the time, okay, you're out of the war, you're in there for 6. He was in before and after the war. He was a hard hat diver, so he got a bonus for staying in to go out and salvage ships in the Pacific and stuff. He was based in the Aleutians. If you watch the crab show up in Alaska, Dutch Harbor, my father built all those docks.
Wow.
And it's funny, the one time I was able to watch it before he passed away, and I remember him mention Dutch Harbor. I say, Dad. He goes, yeah. And he tells me the story. He goes, I don't know why they go out 150 miles to sea. He was 80-something and stuff and getting a little ornery. He goes, when I went down in the harbor, he goes, and I'd be down there with a bit and brace drilling through the timber. He goes, all of a sudden, he says, I'd feel it crawling up my body. He goes, and the arm of the crab would come up over my shoulder. He goes, I'd take off my work line, off my breastplate, tie it to the leg, give it 2 tugs, which was the signal to raise it up. And I lost a lot of pictures I had, but he was showing me pictures of crabs that literally it was like 2 feet across the body and the legs were like 5 feet long. And I was like, I saw it. So you ate pretty good. He goes, oh yeah. He says, we didn't go to chow hall. He says, we had crab, we had salmon, we had all kinds of fish every night. So for a kid from the Depression, and the reason he joined, he went in 1940. And he was at Pearl Harbor when it was bombed. So stuff like that kind of runs in our family.
I can see.
I don't know whether there's too many people out there that, one relative was at ground zero and one father and son team anyway, that was and a ground zero. So, but he did his time. He became a sanitationman. He was a provisional sanitationman right on Braddock Avenue in Belrose at the office there. He had to do a little politicking and handing out stuff for the local judge and stuff, but he got hired as a provisional. And then I think he took that test, got on, and then he eventually, at the time back then, because there's so many openings, they were giving both the police and fire combined tests together. And he passed them both, and he got called for the PD first. And he went through the firefighting school in Pearl Harbor. I have the certificate for it, 1942. And he decided, I'll become a cop, and he went on the job. And then it was like, okay, hey, they got boats. I was in the Navy for 6 years. I'm chief boatswain's mate. I mean, he was really skilled with knots and ropes and all. Forget it. So he applied, and he got called for him and a bunch of other cops in the one-way precinct, which is where he worked, made a big collar at the time. Somebody was taking the nickels and pennies out of the parking meter at the time. And the CO called him in, who eventually became an assistant chief of the job. And he said, listen, they're knocking over these parking meters and the city's going crazy. Now, what could have been in there at the time? $5 or $6, $7, $8,
yeah.
Who knows, But like within the first 3 days, they found the guys. So here they are out there. You got my father's Brownie box camera, trying to take a picture. It's like 1953 or 54. But they took pictures of them doing it. Then they were like, well, let's follow these guys. Well, they were doing it in Bay Ridge. They were doing it in Manhattan. So finally, after 3 weeks of making basically their own hours, and it was a different time back then. And after they realized we got these guys, the boss is like, tells the lieutenant, get these guys in here. They've been on their own for 3 weeks. Well, they were having a good old time, back then in the local bars and restaurants and stuff, and brings them in. And they paid their own money to get the pictures thing. Here's the guys doing it. So what do you want to do? Well, every other guy, there was like 6 of them, I think, said plain clothes. Like I said, different time back then. And that's where the money was. Okay, the graft and all that stuff that was going on. And my father just wanted to be on the boats. He was a sailor through and through, 6 years in the Navy. And he goes, Jimmy, he says, I could probably get you a detective shield tomorrow. But nobody goes into harbor with like 3.5 years on a job. Well, they went through. He did, I think, like 2 summers. And the second summer, he went on the second year as a summer detail, and they kept him. And but he went back to the precinct for like a month. But then they said, listen, we got to send you back, but we're going to bring you back because we got a bunch of guys retiring. And he did that. And he finished up his career there. I guess all the things from World War II and stuff caught up with him and stuff, and pulling bodies out all the time. But alcohol took its effect on him and stuff like that. And they basically said, listen, you got 15 years on the PD, you got 5 on sanitation, leave before, you lose everything. And he did, and straightened out and stuff like that a couple of times, but eventually got him. But he still lived to 82. He lived right here in Massapequa at my sister's house and stuff. And but I always said I probably learned more of what not to do with my life than I did about what to do with my life. But my dad would stop and help anybody. I remember being on the Grand Central Parkway, and my father would see a guy stop changing a flat. My father would stop. My mother would go, what are you doing? We got to get to wherever we're going. Just give this guy 5 minutes. And my father would go over and help him put up the tire in the car. And he goes, well, now he would look and he'd come back. it was only 3.5 minutes, Margaret, and that was it. And then he on our way. But that's the way he was, and you can see his flag is right behind me there. My grandfather's on the other side. He was a World War I vet, and he was a litter bearer. So I guess that's where my EMS side comes from him,
right.
From doing that stuff. But yeah, I started, in Belrose, growing up, always being a buff, getting in trouble because every time I heard the sirens coming down Cross Island Parkway on the service road with 304 engine and 162, I'd be straight in my left to see like the 2 seconds they'd flash by on the thing, and the nuns, yelling at you, or the regular teachers yelling at you. But it was always there. And my cousin Kenny, who was one of the original members of the squad, may he rest in peace. Every time I went to their apartment down the village, he would take me down to Engine 18, which is now Squad 18, and go there and stuff. So the bug bit me, and then he gave me a radio. I think I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and it was like you turned the dial to get the frequencies in and stuff, Mike Miller. Anyway, I had that, and then later on, I think my mother bought me when Lafayette Radio was out here. She got me this. It was an AM, FM, marine frequency, all this stuff. But again, it was like a sliding thing where you had to tune in the frequency, and basically all you could get was the PD was on VHF at the time. So once in a while you could get it, but you got the 5 fire department frequency. So I was always listening to it. Then when I saved up some money, I had my first job, I got the 4-channel Fan and Courier handheld scanner, which, was like, wow, this is like, that was like the new world. And, always listen to it. Then going through high school and all that type of stuff and seeing friends and, EMS was becoming a big thing. Emergency was on TV. So, watching that every Saturday night, that the bug bit me to be a responder. And, I dropped out of high school and stuff like that. Had to help out my mom. My dad wasn't at home at the time and all that. And she was very mad when she found out. It took a couple months before she figured out I wasn't going to school and I was working full time. But she was very annoyed. But, I did what I had to do, and that was it. But I knew that eventually I wanted to be a cop, a fireman, when I got into EMS, I moved up quick. I got promoted like in 2 years to lieutenant. And that was probably one of the buffiest jobs. And here I was, I'm like 22 years old. I'm a lieutenant. I got an unmarked car or a marked vehicle and stuff. And I got the scanner with me, and I'm going on everything that was taking place in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan. And it was just great. And then I took the PD test and never thought I was going to make it on air. I was really heavy at the time. Matter of fact, I think it is here's another picture there. I got to move it the other way where I can.
Yeah. Move it to like my right. There we go. Perfect.
I was like 330 pounds, and that was in 81. And when I got the card that I did well, I'm like, okay, I got to get this weight off me. And I did. Went in September, got the weight down, got accepted into the job and stuff, and came on the class of 82. It's the largest class ever. We had, I think they swore in about 3,400 of us. We graduated, I think, about 28.
Was that January 82, that class?
January of 82, yes.
Yep, my friend Irma Rivera was in that class.
Yep. And, luckily, Belrose was nothing but cops and firemen, sanitation, all city workers and stuff. And at that point, I was already married. I got married in 1980. My wife, I met her when I was working on the ambulance and stuff. And we worked with the St. Clair's medics. We had a guy who was in cardiac arrest at 42nd and in the subway on 7th Avenue. And we got the guy back, and right in the subway. And I was working with this MVO, this guy, Johnny Rivera, rest his soul, and got him back so good that when the medic, Al Torres, he actually told him to hold on to the cables. The guy was so cognizant and this is after being in cardiac arrest for about 20 minutes. He was holding the cables, the oxygen, the cables for the EKG, everything. So off we go to the hospital. I jump in the back of the St. Clair's bus. We bring him in there. And this Dr. Deutsch was the head of cardiology there. And he says, well, you guys did such a good job. He goes, there's no reason here. And it was like, take him up to CCU. And we never did that. I mean, my job at EMS, you brought him to the emergency room and that was it. But this was a special case. It was like, okay, I can't let the medics go from there. And we go up to the CCU, and the most beautiful nurse I've ever seen in my life was there. And we got married 2 years later. So my wife, Janet, she just retired last year after almost 47 years as an ER nurse. And she's seen
she earned that. Let me tell you, she earned that.
St. Clair's, she worked. She was the boss for both the 93 bombing at the Trade Center and also 2001. And the first bombing, it was actually part of the case. One of the bombers actually went and brought himself in as a patient into the ER to see what damage they did. That's how messed up they were. And when they caught them all later on, now they went back and they found the name and the whole bit, and they remember, the nurse. Yeah, I remember him. He seemed like nothing was wrong, but he said he was down there and he said he couldn't hear, and there was no dust, no soot, no nothing on him and stuff. And if you remember from 93, everybody had soot on their face. The whole building was burning from the.
It was basically chimney after that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, later on, as they, find that out, and then who knew that, 10 years later, I'm going to be in the Joint Terrorism Task Force. So that was part of the whole thing and stuff. But, she saw a lot there also. Just a quick thing. We took the kids. We were down in D.C. and we're at JFK's gravesite. And I was basically, I always, when I heard how Jimmy Breslin was, he always gave what he called the gravedigger's view, which came from that. When everybody else was putting up all stuff about JFK, he went to Arlington and actually interviewed the gravedigger, digging the grave for JFK. And he always called it, that was the way he looked at it, giving it the working man's point of view. I didn't like the guy personally, his politics and all that. And then eventually I ended up being in the Eastern Queens YMCA, and he would come in the sauna and stuff like that. He always interjected himself. He was just an old, brash Irish, bar guy and stuff.
Well, let me tell you, that's an interview that I would have loved to have had. There's two interviews that I'll never get because they both passed away. He's one of them. Pete Hamill's the other one. And I've interviewed one of the three, which the other one that I actually was able to get on the show last year was Mike Lupica. But Hamill and Breslin, those are two guys I would have loved to have talked to.
Oh, yeah. No, listen, there's nothing. I mean, his writing and stuff, and, the book he did, The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, all that type of stuff. But he was just one of the, he hung out in the gym mills by the courts and heard the cops talking and interject himself, and he would get his information that way and stuff. But I'm walking around. So I said, all right, I started seeing there was people buried around, and I come around the back and I look at this gravestone and I said, Janet, I said, come over here. So the two kids come over, my two kids, Patrick and Maureen, come over. She, what? I go, look. And it was Allard Lowenstein. He was one of JFK's aides, and he was shot and killed in Rockefeller Center.
Really?
And it was a shooting that took place right in the NBC building there. It was about, I'm going to say 79. It's before I went to medic school.
Wow.
And
I didn't know that.
And he didn't make it. But Janet had left the CCU and was now in the emergency room. And a certain machine, I think it was called the Swansgans machine. She was like one of the only people qualified to do it. So she calls me. She says, listen, she goes, I'm going to be staying tonight. We got him here. They're waiting for Teddy Kennedy to show up, the whole bit. And, before they, he's going to talk and the whole bit, we have to brief him and all that. I said, okay. I said, well, I'll go home and just call me whenever, And so she calls me. She goes, well, it ain't going to happen. I go, why? She goes, he just died. I was like, what? So I call a few of the Buff Daily News photographers that I knew and stuff for the Post or whatever. And it was actually Joe DiMaria. He's still around. He came to a fire in Massapequa a couple of years ago. He's still out on the road. He's probably 80-something years old. And I'm at the fire. I drove the heavy rescue there, and I'm looking. I'm going, man, that guy looks familiar. And as I'm walking over, I go, oh, my God, it's Joe DiMaria. Walking over, I go, Joe. He goes, man, you look familiar. Who are you? I said, Pat Pogan. Oh, my God, how are you? Well, I called him up, and I says, hey, just if you need a favor with the news desk, I said, Lowenstein just died. He goes, they just were sending me over. Teddy Kennedy. I go, well, listen, it's all canceled. I says, he just died. He ain't going to make it. So with that, within like 30, 40 seconds, my wife comes outside and she goes, "Did you call somebody?" I go, "No, not me. No, I wouldn't call anybody. Not me." Because it came over WINS. It was like, flash news break. Al Lowenstein has, because it was like the big story tonight. It was JFK's aide. And
right, of course. And it wasn't too long after JFK himself was assassinated. So,
yeah. And so she's like, "You didn't call nobody?" No, not me. I would never do that. You know me. Come on. Eventually I told her and stuff like that. But, it was just one of those things. So she had a crazy career also, all the different stuff. And they closed, I think, in around 2003, 2004. I know I came home when I was doing my contract and stuff and flying around the country, around the world. I came in, I rented a car at LaGuardia. I wasn't going to take a cab, and I rented it, went in, and they were having the last fling. It was closing at midnight, and the medics closed down the block. They had a barbecue truck there. All the local fire companies would come by. All the cops were coming by. The staff was there and everything like that. And, it was kind of sad because here you are. Here's a hospital that, I knew of, like, there was what they call the McNally Pavilion. Well, the family McNally lived in my grandfather's building down in Greenwich Village. Mm. So I knew the name before I went there. I knew that they were part of the hospital, whatever it was, in the whole bit. And so it was kind of like, it was really sad, and you're losing a hospital that, okay, it may not have been the best, but they saved a lot of lives, yeah. And any of the cops from Midtown North and Midtown South, especially after they knew that my wife worked there, would be bringing in a purple themselves, and they push them right through. They always, half the nurses were going out with cops anyway, so that's the way it was. But it was a good time, like I said. And then getting on the PD and getting reassigned to that area, I knew Times Square very well, it was just funny. Like with our class coming out, there was so many cops all at once. I started in Midtown South. I was there for like 2 weeks. I had one of the first collars in what they call the task force, and then was involved in like 2 or 3 others. Like I was telling you off camera before, if you can get them on. Oh God, now I'm forgetting his name. I'm having a senior moment, but
don't worry about it.
We got to get Bobby on here and stuff. He was in street crime. So when I'm sitting in the ambulance on 42nd, I didn't know whether to say anything to him. Was he tailing somebody? He lived around the corner from me. I used to deliver Bobby Gallagher. It hits me. And I used to help his brother Frankie, his younger brother Frankie, deliver to Long Island Press. That's how far back it was. And so, he told, he said they watched there was a couple Army and Navy stores, and the bad guys would come in, and they'd have a guy, street crime, they dress for the part, the whole bit. So a guy would be sitting by the front door, and he'd keep looking over his shoulder, and a guy that they perceived to be a bad guy, or anybody going in there, they would watch him. So if the guy's coming in, they sold holsters. So, the mutt comes in, goes up to the counter, and the guy will go, well, you can't just buy a holster. It's a lot of them. There was some basics. I mean, the guns I had gotten and stuff was like, are you kidding? You could put a 45 in this. You got a 22 in this holster, But they would go in there. So they would do the guy would say, well, you got the gun? Well, yeah. Well, let's try it. So the guy would give one of these, looking around, and he'd pull out the gun from his waistband, his pocket, or wherever, and try it. So they go, okay, we got one. And as soon as the guy came out the door, they'd be on top of him. So when we were working there, it was like, all right, you see that place over there? This is what we're going to do. And we got a couple of guns. And it was like, how, the boss, how are you guys getting these guns? You're 5 days out of the academy, and you guys are grabbing guns, okay? And thank you, Tommy. And you're the best too, brother.
And before you continue, another guy, Carl DeWindt.
Oh, Carl. I'm just out of his house, just before the summer and stuff. Thank you, Carl. And told him, you got to tell me the story because the inspector wants to know. Okay, holy crap. And this was a seasoned guy with medals up to here. He was a sergeant. And he was like, man, he goes, that's a great idea. And it was just really funny. But, then we went on, and next thing I know, they send me up because I had the collars. All right, you're going up to the task force. You had collars already. You went through the system. I got up there. My friend's, my guy from the neighborhood, one of my mentors, he was an older guy. a couple of years older than me, but again, started as a medic, worked at St. Clair's. His wife and my wife worked together. He had a little juice because his father was chief patrol at the time. And
of course.
So, the guys from Belrose ended up there and in Midtown North. His brother, actually, his two other brothers eventually were there and stuff. And but great family, great police family and stuff. And so got up there. He made mention to the NSU sergeant, and I went right into a car. And Sergeant Pete Dingle was my FTO, and so we, you ran around, you went on the jobs, the whole bit, or you had a foot post. And I was up there. I think it was probably maybe my first week, and I'm having a senior moment here, but it was the Carnegie Deli. Now it just hit me. I had gotten to know the owner I was doing a midnight one time. We get a call like right in front of the place, and I was always like, always heard it was very expensive, the whole thing, but it was good, pastrami, corned beef, all good Jewish food and stuff. And so we go in there, and the guy he was basically having a stroke, so we take him out, and I said, "What is this?" I look around. It was like 4 a.m, and every morning he would tell them. Now they were open 24 hours. But he would tell all the local bums and stuff like that, for lack of a better word, and I'm not being politically correct, but that's what everybody called him at the time. His deal with them was, don't be in front of my store during the day when the tourists are here, or at night when the crowds for the theaters are going out. But you come here at 4 a.m, and I will feed you. And he did. He would have probably 30 or 40 of them in there, and I'm trying to think of his name. He did commercials and stuff, and he would say that makes a good sandwich and all that.
I'll look it up.
And I can't think of his name offhand, but again, having a senior moment. But so he says, listen, when you finish, come back. I'll make you a sandwich. So now, whenever I did midnights, I would go there. So now I come walking in as a cop, and I get my sandwich. Of course, he gives it to me for free and stuff like that. They can't do nothing to me. I think the statute of limitations are over. But I go back to the precinct and I walk in, and here's the bag is like this. The sandwiches, I think now the sandwich is like $25, but the meat is like this thick. Okay.
Jeez.
And they're actually closed, but Katz is the same way. It's just that good. And so I come back in and I go up to the lunchroom in the precinct, and a couple old timers are sitting there, and they knew me from being on the bus, and a couple of rookies I worked with, and I'm like, oh man, you went to that place? Would you? And I wasn't going to tell them I got it for free, because I knew that the big complaint from the old timers was all the places that treated cops right. Now every rookie was going there and ruining it.
Before you continue, was it Leo Steiner?
Yes, there you go. Leo Steiner makes a good sandwich. And so I go in, I get it. I go, no, man, he hit me over the head. It was like $24. So I see the two old timers like look at me, like the head shake like this. And then the other couple of cops got up and they went out. So the one turns to me and goes, hey, Patty. He goes, Leo didn't charge you, did he? I go, no, but I wasn't saying that he didn't charge me in front of these guys, because they'll all be running there tomorrow. I go, finally, we got a rookie that knows what he's doing and, has some common sense, So, the the people in Midtown really took care of cops and first responders, firefighters, EMS, the whole bit. Really, there's so many great people out there and stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of that's gone away. But I had a great time Midtown North. I was there for a couple of years, got involved in some incidents and stuff. I just had one of those clouds that followed me. And I did find a rookie picture.
Pete Segretti, by the way, while you're looking for it, says Patty knew his stuff and shared it. He's watching tonight. And William Dempsey says, great man, Patty.
Oh, yeah. We worked together on the outside after the job and stuff.
And by the way, to Mr. Segretti and Mr. Dempsey, quit ducking me. Come on the show. Especially you, Pete. I've been looking for you for a while. And you too, Mr. Dempsey.
I think I know where to put this over now. No, that way.
Yes, there you go.
And that's me and my partner, Tommy Cody.
That's a nice photo.
Yep. This was on 57th Street. The guy was trying to burglarize the place, got behind the roll-down gates, but couldn't get into the store. And so we had to call for emergency to come to there and get him out and stuff. And then we collared him, took the collar. But Tommy went on to become an inspector, retired as Manhattan North. He was the CO to 3-2. He was the CO to 3-0. And now he's down in Florida. And if you're watching Tom and Sue, hello, how are you? Hope everything's good. Well, we had a great time. They called us the Twin Towers. And as I mentioned before, we were involved in an incident on 56th Street. We turned out, and we had a guy who was what I forgot to tell you before. We had a guy. He was an assistant commissioner of the Brussels, Belgium Police Department. So the lieutenant who had the tour that day, he's like, Patty, listen, I go, boss, we got to take somebody with us. I go, we're looking for a collar. We got to. Nah, listen, I want to put him with you. It's okay. So I said, Tommy, I got a headache. Let's run over to St. Clair's. Let me grab some aspirin. And as I'm in there, I hear whoop whoop. I said, oh man, I tell the guy, I said, they give me the aspirin. I throw it in my mouth, run out to the car. He said, we got a man with a gun, 56 between Broadway and 8th. Okay. We get there. We don't see nothing. Central, you got anything? We park the car. I tell the guy, don't get out of the car. Okay. No matter what happens, don't get out of the car. So we come back and we're walking down the sidewalk because they're like, well, he's past McDonald's. He's in the middle of the block, male black, blah, 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 blah. He's got the gun in the bag. And as the G came out of her mouth from bag, the guy steps out of the doorway and pulls a .38 revolver. And we're about 8 feet away. So he had us.
Dead to rights.
Because it was already like, okay, there's nothing here. No, and there was construction going on. No one's pointing. No one's saying nothing. It's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So everybody's out and nobody's telling us nothing.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, this guy just walks out and he starts shooting. And Tommy got in the doorway. I looked and go, well, the two of us ain't going to fit there. My belly will be sticking out, that's for sure. So I died behind two of those construction dumpsters. And that was the big joke that anybody else, when you go to the range, they taught you how to shoot from behind a telephone pole, a garbage can, and a fire hydrant with the 3 choices that they had there permanently. Luckily, I had 2 nice, 4-foot wide dumpsters that were together. So that was my cover. And long story short, one of the sergeants I put over to 13. Every time I came up to shoot at the guy, he's shooting at me. I'm never thinking, in between there's a space like this and the no parking sign is there. I could just go like this and get him. But you just, I want to come over the top and shoot. And every time I came up, it was like a shooting gallery. He's shooting at me. So now I'm like, all right, this time I'm going to the side. And just as I'm going to the side, I see the sergeant is running on an angle. He jumped out of the car half a block away and with one hand throws a couple of shots and catches him in the shoulder. The guy goes down. And I'm yelling, Sarge, you can get the gun. I'll cover you. If he moves, I'm going to yell go, and I'm just going to open up on the guy. And he gets the gun. We go over, boom, boom, boom. And I grab the guy, pick him up. I'm about to give him a shot because I'm like, you're so worked up. He just shot at you. I mean, your ears were ringing a whole bit. And, then I heard the motor drive of a camera. Thank God I was around all the buffs taking pictures for years. When I heard that motor drive, I just dropped him down. That was it. Nurse from Roosevelt who recognized us, she came running up. Can I help him? I said, yeah, go right ahead. And so then that was it. Take it through court, the whole bit. And the next day I finished up. I went to the next roll call the next day at 4 to 12. Thanked all the guys for getting there right away. And they grabbed over, I think it was 100 witnesses. And the squad commander was there, the precinct commander, as I told you before, Sergeant Billy Rath, again, a great guy that you really would have to get on here. Great cop. Started in the 4-1.
Give my number.
Yep, I certainly will. Good guy. He was in the North as a sergeant. He had gotten the shield in the 4-1 back in the Fort Apache days. And him and the CO ran from the station house from 54th to 56th Street. And the CO was as big as me and stuff like that. And he wasn't even huffing and puffing, but he got there and he protected us. The other bosses and the squads and everybody was responding and want to talk to you. Like, no one's talking to them. They're my guys. He only got there the week before. He didn't know us. And but a great guy. Mayron was his name. I couldn't remember it all afternoon, but it just hit me. Mayron. He came from Staten Island. And I eventually ran into him again. I think now he was a deputy chief of Manhattan North a few years later when he was in emergency. And so that was it. We go through the whole thing. Now the riding DAs show up. Everybody's dead. You want to go to the hospital? No, I'm not playing that game, the whole bit. And so I take the collar. I go downtown. He's in the hospital. And so go through the whole day. Now the next morning, the paper is there and stuff like that. And I got the paper and stuff, and there it is. Now it's on the front page, it's on the second page, and the pictures are there and a whole bit. And they had the picture of the nurse working on the guy and stuff, an unknown person aiding the whole thing. So I knew her from she had been a nurse that treated my partner. Tommy Cody had fractured his ankle, and we were there half the night because you fractured ankle, you're going to be there the whole time. We were chasing a perp on the west side and cut through a lot, and Tommy just hit one of them little holes and snap. I mean, I heard the snap and take him to the hospital and the whole bit. And so we, I knew her and stuff like that. And I said, I knew she wanted to be an actress. When you're there for those many hours, you talk to them. And so, I called up the Post the next day and I said, hey, listen, this is her name. She works at Roosevelt Hospital. She's looking to be an actress. She could use a little fame there or put in her portfolio or whatever. And so sure enough, the next day, and that's all part of it, I went out when I finally got home, told my wife, and we were living at my in-laws in Seaford here. And so, I get up and I put my jacket, where you going? I says, I'm going out to have a drink. I said, it was a pretty crazy day yesterday, So I go out and I get a half a load on, but I stayed in Belrose where I grew up at my mom's house. And next thing you know, it's like 6 in the morning and hear the front door open. I'm sleeping on the couch. My wife comes in and she's 9 months pregnant and late already and stuff. And my father-in-law's with her. I said, what are you doing? She goes, I'm in labor. I said, well, I'm drunk. So you're going to have to wait a little bit, So, I had some coffee. I wake up. My father-in-law's there and he was working the night that everything was involved. So I tell him the whole thing. And now I'm sobering up really good. And, I actually had slept quite a bit. And we took off, go to drive into Manhattan to NYU and go in there. And my daughter was only born 11 months before and stuff. And so now we go in and I'm like falling asleep in the chair and stuff. And I got the newspapers. And now it's like that day when the girl is identified and the story's in the paper again. And she goes, what did they do? Get you off at midnight or something? Are you tired? I said, no, Doc, I've been up for like the last 2 days. I said, here, you can read about it. And she was like, what? I says, yeah. I said, the shooting that happened in Midtown the other day, because it was on TV. It was live from the scene, all that stuff. It's Midtown and it's, it happens at 5 o'clock at night. It's perfect for the 6 o'clock news. So everybody saw it and stuff. And she goes, oh my God. She goes, when did you tell Jen? I said, well, I told her last night. She goes, well, did she go into labor then? I said, no. I says, I left and went out, had a couple of drinks and stuff. And I said, she came into my parents' house at 6 o'clock this morning. So a few hours later, my son Patrick was born, knock wood. The DA, when of course we took off. My partner Tommy's daughter was born, I think, 2 days after that. So we weren't at work for like 5 days. So now it's coming up on what they call the 180 days and stuff, like 180 hours. You have to indict somebody, they got to let them go. And the guy shot at us, and he had a 38. So, they want to charge him. So we get in there. Hey, the DA's been calling. I go, yeah. I said, Tommy had a, baby girl. I had a baby boy. I said, no. But you got to go. It's a must appear. They've been calling every day, the whole bit. And my family knew if not to answer the phone or if it was police. No, he's not here, And so, go down to court. We were doing. I go, whoa. I said, man. I said, I had a baby boy 4 days ago. Tommy had a baby girl 3 days ago. What? And she got very upset. She's like, are you kidding me? Oh my God. She says, if you guys would have got killed by that guy, your 2 kids would have never met you. I think that got her more than anything else. And she took that case to the limit. But the problem was he was found criminally insane in like 1968, was in an institute. He was institutionalized for a long time. And eventually he was let out. Okay. He's okay now. Somewhere he found a gun and it all happened. That was it. But he ended up, he was in Manhattan State Hospital for many times. Every 30 days we would be hearing. I would get notified of it just that it was happening. Not that I would go there or anything like that. But finally they stopped sending anything to me. I ran it to her. She's now a judge up in the Bronx. And she was very good. She followed all the way through. And then, like I said, when I get to it later, she comes into the scene later on with an emergency. But, that was it. But I got involved, just Midtown was Midtown. I knew the area. It was great. There was stuff going on all the time. You can make collars all the time and stuff if you want to. if not, other guys would take him and stuff. I was always taking collars and stuff. I enjoyed it there. Great guys. Learned from so many of the old timers there. Actually, I think this week they're having a memorial service for one of the guys. Real nice guy. He did steady midnights and stuff. One night he comes out to the midnight with the long overcoat on. It went down to the knees and stuff like that. And my father had that when he was on the job, and I got it cut down because you couldn't do it, but I had it cut down and I wore it. And Tommy and I, my partner there, Tommy's dad was a captain on the job. Well, he got promoted before he retired to captain. But we were working, and the captain grabbed us one time. And a lot of times back then, you wore the summer blouse on patrol, whether it was a foot post or whatever. And so we all of a sudden get a note of roll call. Hey, the XO wants to see you. What the hell do we do now? Because we managed to get in a little bit of trouble here and there and stuff. Nothing big, but just stuff that, like, you got slapped on the wrist or whatever. You got put on a foot post for, a week or two. They took your sector away or something. So, we go in, and Captain Doonan, rest his soul, a great guy. He was in the Captains Endowment Association, on the board there, Charlie Doonan. And he goes, listen, he says, what are you guys doing? It was our RDO. So I know it's your RDO. Why, boss? What's up? Overtime? And I would take every minute of overtime that came around. You got 2 kids. You're trying to save for a house, the whole bit. Same thing with Tommy. And so he goes, listen. He goes, there's a big shindig going to be at, I forget. It was right at Bonwood Teller or something, right at 57th Street and 5th Avenue, right in the corner. There was a couple of high-end stores there. But there was some big thing with the police foundation, and it was a black tie affair, the whole bit. So I said, well, yeah, boss, what do you want us? He goes, well, I've seen you guys with the old overcoat on. We both had them cut down, and they were sharp uniforms. I mean, that and the Nehru collar one and stuff like that, Pershing collar, I should say. And he says, if you can, it's good. It's at night. Oh, yeah, sure, boss. So we were basically like 2 statues wearing there, but here we were both 6'2" and stuff, and standing there with that whole uniform with the brass buttons and stuff. And nope, not Tiffany's, Billy. The opposite corner, it would be the northwest corner. I think it was Bonwood Teller or something like that. And so we basically just stood, and sure enough, here comes an unmarked car with him, the community affairs guy, and Aaron tuxes and stuff. And we're in there, we're all dressed up, and he's like, listen, once you see that the crowd stop, he goes, this whole thing is supposed to start at such and such a time. He goes, take off, have your meal or whatever, but be back here at like around 9:30, 10 o'clock. You got it, boss. We come back out. And I mean, it was the mayors are there, councilmen, congressmen, senators. It was a real big thing. And here we were to be like the palace guard stand there in the uniform and stuff. But it was a cool looking uniform. I mean, when you finish with it, they called it the horse blanket. I mean, I'm big, but your arms, your shoulders, it was so heavy and stuff. It could be Bergdorf's. I'm not sure. Like I said, the senior moment here, but they were all like right there. There was 3 or 4 of them and stuff. But which brings to mind a funny story. We got a call there one night. I think I was with Tommy, and it's a holding one, and we're like, oh man, means the store cops got him and stuff like that. So we go up, we make our way in, come walking in, and here's this beautiful woman sitting in the corner. So what's up? Well, we got her for shoplifting. I go, what? I mean, dressed to the nines, okay? So I was like, okay. I said, you guys are pressing charges? We try, because it was a bullcrap thing. We'd try and get out of it and stuff like that. But it was like, they wanted it, the whole bit. I think it was like $2,000 worth of stuff. So like, okay. Up, boom, boom, boom. You got a gun on you, give her a toss, call for a female cop, the whole bit for when we get to the station house to do it further. Get to the station house, boom, put her in the cell. And actually in Midtown North, there was just one cell, and then there was cages on the other side. So we throw her in there, and I mean, totally opposite. There's like 3 or 4 prostitutes from 11th Avenue were in there and stuff. So we're in there, we're doing the whole thing, and a couple of guys are in the cell. Other guys had collars, and all of a sudden I hear, officer, turn around, and it's one of the prostitutes. I says, yeah, what's up? I said, I'm not your arresting officer. She says, I know, but come here. come up to the cage, and I'm watching like her hands. Did she have something? Whatever. And she goes, "That's a guy." I go, "That ain't no guy." I mean, you looked at her. You were like, a body on like I don't know what. She goes, "I'm telling you, that's a guy."
Hang on a second. I had just had a breakthrough because now I know I'm not the only one that's happened to. I'm not alone. That's happened to me.
You better tell me that story after we finish then.
Yeah.
But so I'm like, "You sure?" He goes, "Yeah, I can tell." So I go, "Come here." I forget what her name was, that she gave us. I go, and knowing the law was, or not the law, but the rules were, if they still had this, they went into male cells. Okay, no matter what they look like, no matter what the rest of the body looked like, they would go into male cells. So now, well, yeah. I go, "What?" Because I'm like, "Oh my God, this changes everything, So now I open up the cell, take her out, I put her in the male cells, and these three guys are in there like, "Oh man, this is great, man. What are you putting in her head?" I go, "Where do you see what she's packing?" And so we go through the whole process, we do the fingerprint and all that stuff, and I'm still like, okay, go to central booking, go into central booking. I don't say nothing. Well, now the other like 50 cops that are down there, it's a busy night. They're all there. And when you first come in, there was the metal detectors, and then there was the camera. And the cat was a Polaroid camera and gave you 4 pictures. And then he took the one shot. So we come through, goes through the metal detector. So now the cop is they take off your jacket, take off this, blah, blah, blah. It's okay, come on back. Takes off the jacket. Now here she is with this blouse on, and built like I don't know what. And she goes through again. Oh, and the shoes. Goes through. I go, "You got anything on?" "No, I got nothing on me." So I go, "What do we do?" He goes, "She got to take off the blouse." I said, "What?" I had never dealt with this before, with bringing a female prisoner in like this. She got to take off the blouse. Well, now all the hounds are all coming out in the back. All the cops that are working there, the cops that are down there bringing the prisoner through, they're all coming because this girl, she's beautiful. So we come through, and I'll just cut to the chase. We come down to the very last thing are the panties. She's standing there with everything off except for the panties. I go, he goes, "Take them off." Well, she takes them off. And at the time, I guess, whatever. And back then it was big. The condoms used to come in a little tin container. And she had it tucked down there. All right. And sure enough, as soon as the panties come off, they fall on the floor. I go, "I asked you if you had anything." Now, there's like, and now the whole thing was, she's facing me, totally naked. So these cops are looking at her from behind and going, they're all looking at, "Oh my God, man, look at this." So I go, "Do me a favor, turn around." Well, turns around. And she could probably put half of them to shame in what she was packing. And they all just burst. Everybody, "Oh my God, oh my God." They all just take off, and they're running like termites, for crying out loud, And so the sergeant comes over, he goes, "You really know how to break up the night, don't you?" I go, "Sarge, it's your rules." I go, "What can I tell you?" So we go in the whole bit. So now basically once you hand them off, that's it. Now we go to Central Book and do all your paperwork and stuff. But it just was one of the funny things that happened in Midtown North. There was just so much. You got everything in Midtown North. It didn't matter. There was shootings all the time, stabbings all the time. It just didn't have, it was busy. It was an A house. But, as much as there was bad stuff, it wasn't like the 3-2 or the 2-8 or the 7-9. You didn't think of it that way. It's Midtown. And then, like I say, when I got to emergency, went up to 2 Truck in Harlem, now it's like, this is dangerous busy up here. But we had the advantage, being an emergency, you're a cop, and what's coming over the radio is being told to you by another cop of what's going on. So you basically have an idea. We got a whole truck behind us. We got shotguns right, and the holders right there. We got helmets. We got giant vests. We're protected. So the cops on patrol in those precincts and stuff. Thank you, Tony. He's a good man. His son's in the job and stuff too. But you got up there, the cops that worked in the ghetto, I don't care whether it's the South Bronx, wherever it was, busy precincts, they had a tough time on the job, man.
I'm sure of it. Yeah.
They're doing, 10, 20, 50, 15 calls a night, and they're all legit jobs. And it's guns, knives, people getting shot, stabbed, you name it, the whole bit. Yeah. And here we would get the call. Like I said, we were lucky. You still got there in a lot of jobs. There's still some danger, but we knew what we were going into.
Right.
Those cops in those busy precincts, they were going in blind.
And they didn't have the same protection you guys did with the ballistic vest and, the shields and whatnot.
Yep. Yeah. And times we pulled up and cops are down behind cars and all that type of stuff. And, just, you got there. And I mean, and sometimes it would kind of go sideways. I was working with Henry Medina from Two Truck one night. I guess we happened to be downtown, came over as a possible hostage job in a grocery store on Broadway in a 2-0. So we get there, we're like 3 blocks away. Okay, we're on this. We pull up, and the cops are in the street. The hats are on backwards and stuff. We get out with the shotguns. And it's like, yeah, the guy's in there. We got people in the back in the hallway. And most of the time when they told you that, you're like, yeah, all right, the guy's long gone. Well, I turn around. We go in. We see the guy because everybody ran out. We see the guy. Well, I turn around like to tell the sergeant, get more guys in the back and also go upstairs. You don't know what's going on. And all I see is this. All the guns are, everybody in the street, the guns are pointed at us. And I go, and tell those guys to put their guns away. We got the shotguns, we got handguns, and we're going in there. We don't need somebody letting off an errant shot and we get hit, Right. So it was all different where you went and stuff. But it was a great time up there. I mean, I know I just skipped ahead a little bit, but
that's fine. Yeah, you're driving the show tonight, buddy.
Yeah, emergency was great. I knew what I wanted to do. I got out in June of '82 from the academy, and September of '82, I went to issue when it was over in Brooklyn in the old 8-7. Mm-hmm. And I come walking in. It was this ornate old building. It's still there, but the city sold it, and it's apartments now. But it was the issue headquarters. The EMT class was there. The administrative officers were there. Right. And that's where you had to go. And that's, they did everything there. So I go in, and the old timer who eventually would be still on the desk when I got to emergency was in. He said, what can I do for you, kid? I said, I'd like to get an application. All right. Well, you got to have some time on the whole bit. When'd you get on the job? So, well, I got out of the academy in June. Now this is September. He looks at me, goes, throws it down. Pete Dowling was his name. Great guy. He didn't have good luck. He was in 3 plane crashes. Okay.
Wow.
So he throws that. He goes. He sits back in the chair. He goes, "Are you kidding me?" And I'm cleaning it up a little bit. I go, "Well, no, I know." He says, "Kid, you're in where you work." I said, "Midtown North." He goes, "Listen, I guess if you want to come to emergency, that's great." He said, "But you're going to go out there and be making collars. You're going to go to anti-crime. They're going to pull you up to the squad." He says, "And you'll never come near emergency." He says, "Because you'll get the shield and you'll go." He says, "I've seen guys like you. You really want to do the job." No, I really want to do emergency. I said, he says, I said, well, can I have the application and fill it out? He goes, you can fill it out, but they ain't going to do nothing. So again, it goes back. It's like a year or two later. And my dad was on a tear and stuff like that, but he ran into the guy who was his CO in the 108, who had retired as assistant chief in the job. And me and my wife had our apartment on Hillside Avenue in Belrose Floral Park. And my wife says, hey, there's a guy says he knows your father, Chief something or other. And I'm like, oh, crap. I'm like, what the hell would this guy do? I'm like, Jesus, something happened to my father. He got a call or whatever. Yes, Pete Dowling was on the desk. And so I get on the phone. Hey, Pat, how you doing? This is Chief so-and-so. How you doing, Chief? He says, I don't know whether you... I said, no, I know your name very well. I said, you're my dad's CO in the 108, right? He goes, yeah. He said, I ran into your dad not too long. I'm like, oh, God, what kind of shape was my father in? The whole bit. He says,
right.
Listen, he says, I know your old man is on some tough times and stuff like that. He goes, but he was a good cop for me. He goes, helped me in my career and stuff by the calls he made and the guys he worked with and stuff. He goes, in the 108 at the time, he's working Queens Boulevard on a foot post, and that's when they walked midnights and stuff, and it was all nothing but bars. So, middle of the night, he's, the big thing was they come along, here comes a radio car, no radios. They come looking for my father. Hey, Jimmy, we got a cop fighter in the back. And okay, so my father jumped in the back. Here's this guy. He's cuffed in the back off the Calvary Cemetery. They go deep in the recess of the Calvary Cemetery. My father takes off the blouse, gives the cops the gun belt. All right, come on, you. And my father was a boxer in the Pacific in the Navy. And that's the way it got handled back then. You want to fight a cop? Come on.
Go right ahead.
Put up your dukes. And you're in the, my father told me, it was so funny. He goes, he's Patrick. He goes, after I beat the hell out of him, he says, they were more scared. Can you give me a ride out of the cemetery? I don't want to walk out of the cemetery in the middle of the night. Big tough guy. You wanted to fight a cop, but you won't walk through a cemetery when it's dark out, But the chief said to me, he goes, listen, he says, so-and-so, Chief so says, yeah. He was a sergeant for me up in the 3-2 or the 2-8. And he was the chief of SOD at the time and stuff. I'm going to give him a call and see what I can do for you. Your father told me you really want to go to emergency. I said, well, yeah, Chief, I do, but we'll see what happens. And so I said, I really appreciate it. So I go into work like a week later and come in at roll call, see the lieutenant after the roll call. Okay, we're out there. Jimmy Roberts is a great guy. And if there's any guys from Midtown North that are watching, Jimmy we called him the Supreme Allied Commander. He knew computers before the job knew computers. And they'd call up and say we were in backlog of like 10 or 15 jobs. He'd go over the computer, and all you heard was all of the keys going. And you'd be on the TS, and you got that call from Central. We have to notify you in backlog. Hey, Lou, Central says we're in backlog. You'd be on there. Tell him we ain't anymore. And he would take all those extra jobs off and assign them to the different causes. And they go, I go, Lieutenant says we're not in backlog. Hold on. Oh, my God. I don't know where those jobs went, but you guys were in backlog. Okay, well, make sure you know what you're doing the next time you call me, that, you get the right information.
So he was ahead of his time then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
That's pretty amazing. Wow.
Yeah, he knew what he was doing with the computer. He could make that thing dance. He had been in the chief of detective's office.
That's why.
Yeah, he knew his stuff back then, and he was great. I mean, we'd come in at 4 to 12. He did it a couple of times. And as you came in the door, because the sergeants and the lieutenants started early, he'd say, Patty, don't get in the bag tonight. And like you'd see somebody else come in, don't get in the bag tonight. Okay. All the guys, anytime you were involved, we call it Robert's Raiders, because he was just a great guy. And he knew we were all young cops, all, ready to go. And so you come in, okay, listen, the boosting car radio is over on 59th Street. Try and grab a collar. So we're like, okay, this is great. We're not in uniform. Get a radio, the whole bit. We're in plain clothes. First thing, where are we going to eat tonight? Because now we could go into some place and not have to worry about being in uniform and stuff, and go someplace nice. And whether they, remembered who we were or whatever, or somebody knew somebody. But you went out, and like my father did with the guys hitting the parking meters, within 15 minutes, you saw some characters, and you knew that they would do it. They're looking in the cars. They're making the furtive moves. And you just watched. And the next thing you know, you see them pop the window. We'd get them with their legs hanging out. And here you are on Central Park South or 57th Street and stuff. And the legs are hanging out of a car with broken glass. And people just walking past. It's New York. No big deal. We come up, grab worse. Yank them out of the car. They fall on their face. They have the radio in their hand as they're coming out. The screwdrivers fall out. And okay, we'd come into the station house. Beautiful. Great. Now we can tell the boss all right, you guys go back out. You take the collar. And we go back, and now we come back with another piece later on, But he was just a super guy. And so I come into work, and he's like, hey, listen, you got your I got a notification. You got to go to ESU tonight. You got your interview. I go, what? He says, it's in the telephone message log. Came in this afternoon. Interview at ESU at 6 o'clock. I said, you kidding? He goes, Pat, he goes, what I kid around? He goes, I know you've been wanting this. He goes, what do you want to do? You want to take a scooter? Want to take your car? I said, I ain't driving to Brooklyn in a scooter. I said, I'll take my car. I'll put a windbreaker over my shirt and stuff. I go out there, boom, do the interview. Lieutenant Sparky Adams, as he was called. He comes in. He goes, you know why you're here, right, kid? I go, yeah, Lou. I says, I think somebody made a call and stuff. He's all right. At least you're honest with me. He goes, they didn't tell me to bring you into the unit. All I got told was to give you an interview. So they give you a small little test on spatial relationships and mechanical advantage and stuff, and the basic questions if you pulled up to a barricade job. And it was always call for your shoe, call for the patrol supervisor, notify HNT, all that stuff. And so bing, boom, I'm out of there. He goes, all right. He goes, I'll be in touch with you. He goes, I see you had your application in for a while. He goes, but, I got the call to give you an interview. He goes, not to bring you in. He says, but who knows? That could change. He says, call whoever it was that you. I said, well, I don't have the guy's number to call him. The guy is your hook. He's got juice like that, but you don't have his number. I'm like, Lou, I don't. I'm being honest with you, So he goes, well, whatever then. So I get back to the station house. So I go walking in, and Lieutenant goes, oh my God. He goes, what timing for you to get the interview? I go, why, Lou? What's up? He goes, didn't you hear what happened at St. Patrick's? I go, no, why? He goes, you didn't hear nothing? I said, no, I had WINS was off. I said, and I didn't take the portable with me. I said, I had it off actually in my patrol jacket. He goes, and that was the post he gave me. It was St. Patrick Cathedral at night, knowing I was going to for the interview.
Right.
He goes, the guy came in, he says, and said he had a bomb strapped to his chest. He was in there, and I think he took a hostage or whatever. And now here I was standing outside. I would have been the first one in there. I probably would have capped the guy. Although later on, when that did happen, the cop had every right to do it. They transferred him the next day from Midtown North, like out to Brooklyn and stuff. Jeez. Because it was inside the cathedral and he fired and all that. But he says, you would have taken the guy out. You would have been in emergency. They would have said to you, where do you want to go? And you'd be in emergency tomorrow. I go, damn. I go, son of a gun, So now I go walking over. Now the press is there and everybody else is there. And there's two other. He said, I put so-and-so and so over there. There's a large crowd. So I get over. They go, where were you? I thought you had this post. I said, I went for my interview for the issue. I go, and the first thing they said was, you would have got in tonight if you went in there and took care of this, But listen, it's the way it happens, and that was it. But I still got in relatively early. I had 3.5 years on the job. I got the
Which ain't bad. That's not bad, my friend.
Yeah, no. And the thing was, later on when I asked, I said to the boss, and we did have a phone call and stuff. And actually, what do you call it? One of the members of the PBA board called me up when I got the transfer, and he heard about it. He said, hey, listen, he says, I just wanted to let you know who's the one that actually had the juice to get you in there. And he goes, there's a detective from the bomb squad, Pete Parada. I go, you're kidding me. I hadn't seen Pete in a couple of years. He was the intel. I think he was the intel guy. If any of the bomb squad guys were there, yep. I know it's before most of their time, but I think he was the intel guy. He used to go around and teach. And even when we had some bombings back then, especially after Morales, one of the guys from the two paramedics when Morales blew up his apartment in Elmhurst came in there. They got there before the cops did or anybody, and there were chunks of dynamite laying all around. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty dangerous. Here's a guy flailing. He's got his hands are all ripped apart because the bomb went off, initiated right in front of him, and he was with the FLAN. And Pete Hosey was one of the paramedics. Me and him were good friends. He might be on tonight. I don't know. He was forced out. He got into a bad car accident. I believe it was on Christmas Day by Shea Stadium. He was a chief in EMS. But Pete was the one that was in there. So now the story went around. And when I was lieutenant, I ended up going to a bombing that was on, I think it was either 2nd or 1st Avenue. I forget. But the bomb went off and the two techs both got hurt.
New Year's Eve, 1982. It was Tony Sempt and Richie passed.
No, this is before.
Oh, before that.
I was in EMS, and okay. And it was the Yippee headquarters down on 2nd Avenue or 1st Avenue.
Yep, I don't know their names, but that's why they got suits after that.
That's it. And as I'm pulling up, it goes off. So now I put it over EMS. I go, get me buses here. Something just blew up at this 1033. I think that was the code back then for a bombing in EMS. Right. And I run up, and they're taking the first detective, and they're running to a radio car. I'm going, I got buses on it, because that was back then. Even when we came in and they were starting to change EMS, and now buses were getting there sometimes before the cops, they were still in that mode, and it's one of their guys, and I don't blame them. So now I get to the second guy. So I said, listen, pal, I gotta wrap you both eyes. I said, you got damage all, you cut a bull around there. I said, but that's the way we do it. I said, so you're not going blind. I have to bandage up both eyes. I says, because you can't get the same. If you move one eye, the other eye moves, and if there's glass in there, we're going to lose your eyesight. So, okay, no. And with that, a bus pulls up, off we go. Well, it's 25 years later. I'm in D.C. at a conference at the Ronald Reagan building on terrorism. I was in the Joint Terrorism Task Force. I see this guy stand. I see the Honor Legion pin on him. So I'm in strange territory. I don't know anybody. There's vendors there and all this stuff. And so I go over. I said, "Oh, you want a job in New York?" He says, "Yeah. How you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm Pat Pogan. I'm a detective in Joint Terrorism Task Force." He says, "Oh, I'm retired from the bomb squad." He said, I says, "Oh, when did you get out?" He says, "Well, I got forced out." He said, "The bomb blew up on 2nd Avenue." And I look at him. Now I'm looking at his face. Now it's 25 years later. There's no blood, no cuts, all that stuff. I go, "Did you go to the hospital in the ambulance or did you go to the hospital in the radio car?" He takes a step back and looks at me. He goes, "I went in the ambulance." He goes, "How would you know that?" I says, "Do you remember the big fat guy leaning over you telling you I had to wrap up both of your eyes?" I said, and he looks at me and goes, "Oh my God." He goes, "Yeah, that was you." I go, "Yeah, I know." And now it's like we're hugging each other.
World.
Yeah. I mean, it's 25 years later. And he was working for Channel 5 basically as a researcher. Like they get a story. Okay, research the Civil War, what happened on this date or whatever, or a bombing or whatever it was. And again, back then, the computers were just out there. So now it was in the computer age. But I ran into him and I was like, wow. It was just amazing. We went to dinner that night and everything. I forget his name. I should have at that stage realized, start writing names down and stuff. But anyway.
I'll get it for you.
We went. I'm sure one of the bomb squad guys will know who it is and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was just. I was like, wow, But again, when Pete calls me up the next day at my office at Bellevue, he goes, "Were you down at that bombing yesterday?" He says. I go, "Yeah, Pete." I said. He goes, "I figured it was you." He says, "They said it was a big, huge lieutenant from EMS, and he took out the kit and started bandaging him and stuff." I said, "Well, listen, we got a little problem." I said, when they took out the first aid kits, which were in the old Scott boxes, which most, as you know, most of the guys from the bomb squad come from ESU. Mm-hmm. And they must have went to one of the squads and got the old Scott boxes, and they made them into first aid kits. Well, knock wood, thank God. Up until that point, nothing had really happened. Well, when they throw it in front of me, they open it up. I mean, the bandages were stained and everything. I guess water got into it. So I ran back to my truck, grabbed my bag, and that's what I used to bandage him up with. I go, "Pete," I already talked to the borough commander. I said, "I'm coming down to the bomb squad." I says, "with all new first aid gear for you guys." As when I told him what happened when I opened up that box, I said, "You guys got to have new stuff." He says, "Oh, thanks a lot, Pat." He says, "I will be here." He goes, "Whatever time you get here, I'll be here." So I went down there, and at the time, Huey McGowan was a sergeant in the bomb squad.
Right.
And I believe the CO's name was Lisi. He was a lieutenant. And so I come in like Santa Claus with 2 large garbage bags filled with everything, plus EMS bags and stuff to put it in. And I come in and I'm sitting there. And that's when I had gotten notified about going going for my medical and stuff for the PD. And so Pete goes, he said, "Maybe we can make a phone call and see what." I said, "Well, I'll look at all the weight. I got to lose the weight." But anyway, I got through it in the whole bit. But Pete was a great guy. And I helped him out with his wife. She was a flight attendant, but she knew, I think she was a nurse also. So she used to teach like all the stewardesses, all the first aid stuff. So I got her stuff. I was able to get her into some classes to bring her up to date on stuff. But Pete was a real good guy. But like I say, when I got in, my buddy called me up and he said, "Hey," he says, "I just want you to know who got you in there." He goes, "Because that's the name that's next to your application." Because that's how it was done back then and stuff. But got in. Like I say, it was me, Mike Corr, Wayne Saunier, Jack Cambria, Jin Yee, Larry Olivetti. I know I'm going to miss somebody. We had 2 guys from Transit, Bobby Mason and John Coughlin from Transit EMRU. Who else?
You mentioned Richie Teamsma earlier.
Yeah, Richie was in there. Richie Kimman was, man, I know I'm forgetting somebody. But anyway, STS at the time was only 3 weeks.
3?
3 weeks.
Not even 6? I know at one point it was like 6 weeks. No,
They
wow.
expanded it after us.
Okay.
And then you did a week at the range for the heavy weapons, but it was all you were in and you're out.
Wow.
And
crazy.
I had run into Jack Casey. He had done my background thing. Plus, he was at the time in the 5th Squad down at one truck. So every time I called for emergency in Midtown North, he would show up in the big truck, or he was U4 and stuff. So, but one day he looks at my name. We had an EDP in the cells. He goes, Pogan, did you put in for emergency? Yeah. He goes, okay. He says, I got you round robin. He says, I'm going to be coming around talking to your boss and stuff. So I let my sergeant know and let the lieutenant know and stuff like that, and the XO and CO and stuff. And so I, I'm like, oh, okay. So now, oh man, I got to be on my P's and Q's when he's around. Now it's game time. But we came in, and on one of the, I think it was like our last week, middle of the week, they did this thing. It was Operation Marlin. Now it just hit me. I can't remember what I had for dinner last night, but I can remember 1986 Operation Marlin. It was a citywide. They were taking down all the numbers joints in the city, over 2,000 locations. So when we went at Floyd Bennett Field, we got sent to SOD when it was in Flushing Meadow Park. Our class, they sent us out with other guys. I ended up with one of the instructors from STS, Jeff Kelch. They said, go to 3 Truck in the Bronx. So we go to 3 Truck in the Bronx. And so we're up there, and they were handing out assignments of where to go. They already hit all the places, but now they wanted to take them down a little bit and stuff. So since they all had the Lexan and stuff, like inch-thick Lexan, someone had the bright idea that if you shoot CO2 fire extinguisher and freeze the plastic, it'll shatter in a million pieces. Brand new, like 25-pound CO2 fire extinguishers. So we go to the first one. Jeff goes, well, hit. I go, Jeff, I'm a volunteer fire. I know it's not going to do that. He goes, well, that's what they gave. I said, well, save it. I said, that's like a $50 or $100 extinguisher, heavy-duty metal thing, because it was under pressure at CO2. And I said, well, save it. I said, take it home or something. But I said, it ain't going to do what they say. I says, I'm going to smash that, So at the time, it was a big Kelly claw tool, because the Halligans weren't out yet. That's another story. So we go in this place, and it had to be 2-inch thick Lexan. I'm hitting it. So finally, I'm like, all right, hitting in the middle is just dispersing the energy. I said, how stupid am I? Go back to my forcible entry cells. I go to the corner. I hit it in the corner. The whole piece comes down. It actually cracked the tile floor. It weighed so much. Wow. So, yeah. And picking it up, it had to be a 200-pound piece of Lexan. So I said, what we need to do is either take this with us, because if we leave it here, you're going to put this place back together tomorrow. It was diamond plate on the walls and all that type of stuff, the whole bit. And so Jeff looks at me and goes, well, you're the guy that wants to wreck everything. Go right ahead. Okay. So I'm just taking everything apart, the counter apart. I'm ripping out all the diamond plate and stuff. And I said, listen, maybe they can use a project down at the field for something, or make some type of heavy-duty shield out of it, or take it to the range and test it and see what it would do, that thick. So we left there. We go to another job, same thing. We go there. But that was while we were in STS. So that actually took a day away. But that morning, Jack Casey came out, and he came up to me and he says, I'm not sure whether I'm going to get you to 1 Truck. And I wasn't really sure whether I wanted to go there, to be honest. I had always been in Manhattan. I figured maybe a change of pace. And as well, Sarge, whatever happens, happens. But, we'll see what goes. But it would put me there. My wife is still at St. Clair's, and I was used to everything down in Lower Manhattan, the hospitals and everything else, and the area, know every street, every nook and cranny. And so Captain Heller came down the next week. We're supposed to graduate, and that consisted of him walking and going, okay, you nuts. You're going to 2 Truck. You're going here. You're going there. Have fun. Enjoy the career. Now, he was a career guy in emergency service and stuff like that. And now he was the XO. He got shot on 101st Street. Round went through his arm and stuff like that. Didn't even want to go to the hospital. Typical old timer. Didn't even want to go.
Let me stop you right there, because while we were talking, and I thank him for this, Ray Ruiz sent me some photos. He has 3 of them that he just sent. He texted them
from 101st Street?
From 101st Street. So I'm going to show the first one. Yeah, here's like the newspaper covers.
Yeah, there we are.
Yep.
There's Colonel. There's Sergeant Schultz standing there, the tall one, and right next to me. Because everybody right away called me Sergeant Schultz when I'm standing with the old hot pot on there. Yeah. And that's actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's Jerry McCarty was the boss's driver, is right in front of Ray with the soft cap on. Yeah. Yep.
And here's the last of the three. Well, this is Camp Smith.
Oh, that's up at Camp Smith. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, the Everly brothers from one truck. God. Yeah. A lot of fun up there. Actually, that picture, I'm smiling. But the first time I went there, I had a really bad impacted tooth. And I was in so much pain. And Jack Case seen me a couple. What's the matter? I said, Jack, I got bad infection. He said, well, go out, go home. And I said, no, this is the first time I'm going to Camp Smith. Yep, 2 Jacks beat a Royal Flush.
And by the way, before you continue, Paul Yurku texted me as well. He told me to tell you hello.
Hey, Paulie, what's going on, pal? Great guys, man. And before I go any further, just every guy in emergency had something to contribute. It was a team effort on everything we did, even though sometimes individual medals went out and stuff. Everybody worked together. It was just a team effort by everybody, no matter what. And even sometimes, like, up by us, I mean, first time I did it, one of the cops that was flew in from another truck, the precinct cop was standing talking to this jumper. And, when you figured the amount of time for it to go through the system, they get there, we get alerted, we get down there, it was probably 10 or 15 minutes. So this cop is talking to this guy. Now, what most of them did was, like, as soon as they saw us there, they kind of backed off. So I was to the thinking of, if this cop was able to talk and keep this guy there, because when they went through the psychology of it and stuff, like, basically, if they're still there when you're going to be there, you're going to be able to talk to them. You're going to be able to get close enough to at least make a grab. They may still want to jump, but, they didn't do it right away. Some went up and you just got a call, jump it down, and you went there, got out the body bag, boom, boom, boom. They did, crime scene took pictures, the squad came, and that was it. So I was always like, if this cop knew enough to talk the right way to keep him there, I always took one of the belts. We had our own Laracus belt, but I would take the old Pompier belt and the ladder belt and put it around them and tied them off. Now, what I always did was I tied them short because I didn't want them going over the side and hanging on just that belt. So I tied them short that they really couldn't move any further than we were. And our partners who were tying us off would guesstimate that we would get to the wall and be able to grab them and not anything more. He's like, you let the cop, I go, yeah. I go, he was talking to him. He kept him from jumping for the 15 minutes that it took us to get here. And then for us to, run up 15 flights of stairs. And that's when I could do that, or 30 flights of stairs. You got up there and you're like, okay, now you're tying everything up, you're setting everything up, and you're working your way out. And the precinct cops knew how to bring you into the conversation. Oh, this officer's going to talk to you. And I just slipped my arm around him. And I said, and this officer has been great talking to you and stuff like that. And I just go, you ain't going nowhere, just like out of the side of my mouth. And they'd be like, huh? I go, just hang in there. Just go with the act. And, and then some of them were really great. They would play right off what you said. And I like tap him in the butt, like, talk, he's turned away from me. Maybe your voice will get him back, So to me, it was a team effort by everybody that was out there, whether it was the cop on patrol, who, like I said before, had nothing. They didn't have the Roland Craftsman toolbox like we had. They didn't have the weapons. They didn't have the heavy vests, the helmets, all that type of stuff. They're out there with a soft top and a 38, and here we are with shotguns and machine guns and, everything else and stuff.
Robots.
So, again, as they always said, patrol is the backbone of the job, and it was really proven out many times by everybody there. But like I said, I got to emergency and got up, 2 truck. Okay, no, it's up in Harlem, fine. And so the first day, me and my corps actually went up there on a Sunday, bring our stuff up, because I think he was doing 4 to 12 on Monday. I was doing the day tour until we actually fell into a squad. I forget how they did it. But so we came up there on a Sunday and we met a couple of the old timers. And okay, yeah, I'll be in the morning. I'm staying over. And okay, boom. So the next morning I'm off to the races at 5:30 in the morning. Make sure I ain't late my first day, and stop and get Entenmann's cake and some bagels and stuff like that. And and they had given me the key the day before. So I come up, and now there's other guys are there. And they said, oh, you new guys? Yeah, I'm one of the new guys. I said, I'm the first one working today, the whole bit. So, okay. I said, no, they gave me a locker yesterday and stuff. So I says, oh, so they're like, okay. I said, oh, man, oh, somebody taught you well. You got donuts and you got bagels. So I went in, and just as I'm changing, I hear the radios crackling and stuff, and I hear feet going, and guy Georgie Adams, I don't know whether he's in there tonight, but Georgie's on Facebook with me and stuff, and he goes, hey, new guy, come on, we got to run. I says, okay, I thought that was us. So we go downstairs, we jump in the car, and I half heard it. I just heard something about a car and the water and rivers, side river and all that. So I guess George didn't hear the whole thing either, but we're on Riverside Drive by the river. So Central, what's that? And we're at 72nd, where they said in Central Park, car is upside down in a stream or next to a river. So I got the radio. I'm like, there ain't no river, but there's, I think there's a stream because the lake's connected and stuff. So now we go over. When we get there, car is flipped over, down an embankment, overturned. 4 nurses are in it. They're on their way to work. And so I get out of the car, and I'm just going by what they told us, always take a second tool. So I had the spare set of keys. I go right to the back, and George goes, what are you doing? I said, well, they told us at STS, always bring another tool up, even though, the other car is here. All right, no problem. So we get it, carry it up. As I'm coming down the embankment, John Elta, the father of Stevie Elta, who came later on, he's like, come here. So the car is totally upside down. There's water is running underneath the car and into the car. The nurses are in there. Their white uniforms are like all muddied up and stuff. He goes, take that door. I'm like, all right. So I start going with the tool. And he said, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm taking the door, like you said, like a little kid. I'm like, and I'm twice the size of John. What? I said, well, if I pushed it, he goes, oh, all right, I see. He goes, go ahead, keep going. So I pop and I take the door off, and we get in there, and I climb in, and we get the nurses out and backboards and all that. Rescue 1 got there, the local companies and stuff. So now I come out, and there's a bunch of guys I knew from Rescue 1. So they say to me, oh, man, there you are. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, you made it. Blah, blah. Said, but we can't talk to you no more. You're an emergency cop. We can't talk to you no more. Kid around and stuff. And like, hey, congratulations, the whole bit. We know you wanted it, the whole bit. So next thing you know, finish up, take the tool back. And John Elta goes, when we get back to quarters, I want to talk to you downstairs in the garage floor. Now, out at STS, they explain some of the things that go on in quarters. And if you ever get called out and told to go down on the apparatus floor, garage floor, it means you're going to be putting the cuffs on, putting the gloves on. I'm like, Jesus Christ, my first day. And this guy wants to take me on. What am I supposed to do? We get down there, we go down to the second set of doors, go onto the garage floor, and he turns around, he goes, listen. He goes, and I'm waiting. He goes, it's your first day here. Your first day. I'm retiring in like 2 weeks. I'm gone. I think I got 3 more tours. I'm retiring in 2 weeks. But let me just tell you something. Keep your eyes open. Keep your ears open. He says, and you'll learn something every day. Because it proved it right now. He goes, I forget how many years John had on the job. And he goes, and I learned from you. He says, I never saw a Hearst tool used like that before. He says, where'd you learn how to use a tool like that? I said, well, I'm in a volunteer. Another blue light boob. All right, the whole thing. So now he's like breaking. And I'm like, so I said, John, we're not going to go at it down here. He goes, you think I would take you on? Look at the size of you compared to me, But that's what they told us at STS. And plus he said it in such a gruff thing.
Right.
So he goes, great job. He says, like I said, keep your ears open, your eyes open. You learn something every day. Because I learned from you, your first job that you walked in the door. Because I never saw a door taken that way before. So I'm like, damn, I'm not going to be beaten up like a senior guy here or something like that, And, it always stuck with me. And just to skip further, when I was instructing STS after I messed up my shoulder, in comes Stevie Elta in the class. And I had met him once before. And so he's in there. And me and Charlie and Timmy Farrell, we did the hazmat stuff in the beginning. And then Danny Masterson, John McLaughlin came on board after that, and a few others before I left. And when a new group came into STS, we would get them first for hazmat because we did all the SCBA training with them and stuff, all the SCOT training. put them in suits and all that to see if anybody was claustrophobic. Because those suits, some guys got a little phobic being inside of them. They like ripping them open, and you can't do that when you're inside of a cloud of ethyl methyl death. And so we start off the class, and I'm welcoming to SDS and sitting there, and I told that story. And Stevie was sitting in the back. So all these cops are like, it's your first day of learning. So they were all sitting there, and they were all told, keep your mouth shut and just learn from all the senior cops that are going to be teaching you. And they were all like hanging on the story. And I said, and it was that officer's father right there that told me that on my very first day after my first job. So that's what I'm going to tell you guys. So Steve went home, told his dad, and it was the first time he actually had a graduation. So at the end, and now the class was probably maybe 3 months, I guess. And they had a graduation and stuff, the whole bit. And so the day of graduation, here it comes. And I go walking outside. It was set up outside. It was a nice day. And I see Stevie and I see his father, John. And I go walking over. And he goes, "Oh, my God, Pat, how the hell are you?" The whole bit. And John was involved in the shooting up in the Bronx with Bumpers.
Bumpers, yeah.
Yeah, he was involved in that. If you look at the newspapers from that day when Steve Sullivan was found not guilty, John is in there celebrating with him. And I think Richie Deshi was involved. I don't think he was in the picture, but I'm not sure. I know that John Elter was, but and Steve Sullivan. And but he says, my son told me that story that you told. He goes, here it is, like 20 years later. He goes, and people still know me. That's what he was most. But he said, to hear that story and my son tell me that story, that he's hearing a story about his father. Really doing the right thing by me and telling me what to do and the whole bit. And John unfortunately passed away just a couple of years ago and stuff, but a real great guy, really knew his stuff and stayed involved. Used to come to the retirement parties after that. I mean, we had his retirement party, but still came to the parties after that and stuff. But like I say, in emergency, working up at home, we had some great jobs, really good jobs. My son, when I texted him tonight that we got the technological challenges out of the way, he said to make sure you tell him, because he only just found out about it. Dave Hanshu, who was he was one of the Spot News photographers, probably one of the top guys out there, running around at the time. I mentioned Joe DiMaria before. Joe was good also, running around to all the fires and all. And that's how I met a bunch of them years before, running around to buffing all the fires in the city and emergencies in the city, and then getting on EMS and all that stuff. But Dave used to come to Two Truck all the time. He'd hear the jobs. He came up there. And it was a Saturday morning. It was Memorial Day weekend, and we were notoriously short on the weekend because roll call did the right thing. And if guys put in for the day, they gave them off. So it was myself and Eddie D'Alessandro's truck only, and it comes over as a barricade hostage job. Somewhere, I think in like the 2-8, it was like 116, 117th Street or something, I forget. And we get there, and the priest was like, "Yeah, listen, the guy says he's got a rocket, he's got this, he's got that." I go, "Well, more than likely he doesn't, but we got to go through the whole thing here. Did you call for the duty? Yeah, duty captain's been notified." So, okay. So it was just truck only. It was me and Eddie. So the chauffeur, you got to stay with the truck. Eddie goes upstairs, and other cars were coming from 10 truck and 3 truck. And I don't think at the time there was a 4 truck and all that stuff. So we were still a little bit short. And like I said, roll call did the right thing, giving everybody off. And so it took a while. H&T guys got there right away. Everybody's upstairs. So I'm looking up and I see this little black girl at the window, and she's got a baby in her arms. And so now the boss at U4 is there, and I think maybe even the XO or somebody was there. They went on the weekend duty. And I said, "Listen, the girl is at the window with the baby. I can get them with the ladder, with the 24-foot ladder on the truck. I actually needed a 35, but we only had a 24-foot that came on the new Fords when we got them in 86. Mm-hmm. But no, don't do that. Don't do that. I'm so annoyed. I'm like, she's at the window, and I don't see the guy at all. I can see it's only the second floor. I can see into the apartment pretty good. But eventually, boom, all the talk and everything else, we got her out, and the baby was only 7 days old. And back then, of course, like I say, everybody's got to put a record to everything. She was the youngest hostage that was ever held in New York and recovered. and there was a picture of me. I grabbed the girl, and I got her, and I'm walking her. She's got the baby and her little sister on. The tears are coming down her face, and it was in the paper the next day. My name is in there because you can see my shield, and plus Dave knew who I was, so he put the name on the byline and stuff like that. And but my son when I put it up a couple of weeks ago, after Dave had sent me a bunch of old pictures and stuff. And again, this is I'm going to say this is the media, this is the press. Dave being part of that, and he now teaches down at the NYU for photojournalism and stuff. If he came on with half his collection, the pictures,
that'd be a great show.
Over the years,
I'm going to get that photo on right now. I'm going to put up momentarily of that hostage shop. I think it's you with a little girl in your arms, and I don't know if it shows the baby, but it does show you. I believe.
Well, I'm kind of caressing her, and she's got the baby in her arms.
Right? Yeah, it's the one. So
I have it on my phone. I mean, right now. If I look for it, but my son he's like, Dad, it takes me. He just celebrated his birthday and stuff. He says it took me 36 years to find out that you rescued like the youngest hostage ever. I'm like, Patrick, there's lots of things. I didn't come home and give you a rundown of what I did every day at work because your mother, you'd be scared. I says what we did, and there was a joke, they'd be sitting there, I'd do a day tour or whatever, and my wife would get home, cook dinner and stuff, and they'd be waiting, and here I am, I'm not there, and my daughter, I forget what it was, and my wife, I wonder where your father is, I wonder if he's coming, and that was before pages and cell phones and all that type of stuff. She goes, Mom, just put on the TV, because if he's not home, he's going to be on TV. Something big is going on at work. And sure enough, they put on the TV, and I forget what job it was. So that was like always in my mind. But later on, and moving up a few years, but just on that point with my daughter, you never realize the effect that it had on your kids of what we did. And we had the Flight 800 crash. And when that happened, I was at home. A friend of mine, it's a fireman, called me. Lives a couple blocks away. He's in the Massapequa Fire Department with me. And he says, Patty, he goes, hey, I says, yeah, I heard something on the radio. He says, yeah, he goes, plane down a whole bit. So I called the office. They said, no, you guys, we're sending guys out. And they had an old torpedo recovery vessel. So they took every guy that was qualified in scuba that night. They put them in that boat. Well, it took them 6.5 hours to get out there. Okay. But they got out there before dawn broke, I think. And they all went in the water recovering bodies that were floating the whole bit. And then the next morning, myself, Charlie Rupert, and Timmy Farrell drove out. And it's like, what should we bring? Well, we'll find out what they need. We got out there. And Danny Masterson, it just hit me. Danny was with us also. So the four of us went out there. We go into the Coast Guard base. Another part of the story. Here's this guy. He's got a flight suit on. He's got Colonel's emblem on. And he's got, the flashlights with the orange cones on them. And there's the helipad is there. So we go walking past, they made us park, and then we're walking in. And it's like, hey, Colonel, how you doing, boys? He walks past, and he's got a radio, and he's doing all this, and we're watching that. And there's like 4 helicopters are circling. One's coming in for a landing, all this stuff. Now we're watching through the day as we're out there and stuff. We're helping guys we knew from the FBI evidence response team. And they said, the guy that ran it, he's passed away now. He says, hey, can you guys get me suits? He knew we had a large stock of suits. So, yeah, what do you need? I said, we'll call back to Floyd Benefield. We'll have him put on the next helicopter coming out. So he says, I just need Tyvek suits just to cover all the guys and protect them. I said, well, what about gloves? All right, we'll take gloves. So we had to wait because all of a sudden I think the big ship they were using to bring the mayor and the governor out, I think the state helicopter was down. So Pataki and Giuliani were coming out. And was it Pataki? I forget.
At that time it was, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So they come out. I grabbed the guys from ABA. I said, hey, listen. He goes, oh yeah, we know. We'll be back in like an hour, round trip and stuff. So they brought it out. We did it. But this whole time, each day that we're going out there, we were out there probably the next 4 to 5 days, and we're seeing this guy, and he's got everything going and a whole bit. But I was like, geez, a colonel direct, they didn't bring somebody in from, like I know they have mobile air controllers and stuff like that, or forward air flight controllers, and the guys that are out there to deploy with the SEALs and all the special ops teams that are forward air controls calling everything in and stuff and where to land and where to bomb. So why would this colonel be here? Well, it doesn't come out till 4 months later. The guy was a total fraud. He was locked up for impersonating a doctor and doing medicals at Fort Dix on the new recruits coming in. And someone one day said to somebody out there, because they knew about the uniforms and the tabs, he had a Ranger tab. He goes, he's got Air Force flight coveralls on. Guys in the Air Force can go through Ranger school, but they're not allowed to wear the tab. He goes, and that guy's wearing a Ranger tab. And he's a colonel. He goes, that wouldn't be right. Well, they go out there, they check his credentials, and then they run his name, and it comes up he's wanted by the feds over in New Jersey. So now it comes out, it's like 3 months later, it's in Newsday and stuff. So I cut it out because at the time, Charlie and I and others, Timmy Farrell, we were going around the country talking about WMD and terrorism, and we would give them some stories of what we learned. And it was always like, listen, the nut job buffs will come out on any big job like this. And I tell them that story, and we had it made into a slide, and we put it up in a slide. And then even the bosses from the Army and DOD, they put it into the whole lesson that, you got to watch who's around and who's coming in the crowd, what credentials are and everything else. And what was his name? I don't know.
Let me look it up.
Yeah, he was a tall black guy. I don't know what his name was. But anyway, and then we were out there. There was another guy came along. There's a reporter who was related to somebody in emergency, and he got in the very beginning. So he came up to me and he recognized me, and I knew who he was and stuff. So I took him around and was showing him around. But there was a guy with him, and again, I told this part of the story. I said this guy had legitimate press credentials, and so he. The other guy asked me a question. I go, who? And I just got the feeling like he wasn't with. It's Al Baker's son. Okay, it's
Al Baker Jr. Yeah,
Al Baker Jr. And who at the time I think was with Newsday. Then he was with the Times, and then he was assistant commissioner on the job too for press. Anyway, so the guy asked me. I go, who are you with? And he said, I'm with the Government Bureau. Now, he's got a Suffolk County hat on. I think it says Suffolk Police and was in yellow. And I'm like, okay. I go, so now I'm like, Government Bureau. It's Washington Bureau or San Francisco Bureau or New York Bureau, whatever media you are with. So finally I go, who are you with again? I'm with the Government Bureau. I go, no, who are you working for? With the Government Bureau. So with that, I go, Al, come on over here. And so we walk away. And I see the guy walk, and then I see a Suffolk detective I know. And I said to him, hey, John, do me a favor. I said, that guy walking down, see the guy walking down? Yeah. I said, I thought he was a reporter with a friend of mine here. I said, and he's giving me like a weird answer. He's telling me he's with the Government Bureau. I go, it just doesn't sound right. He goes, yeah, you're right. That's weird. So he goes running down. Now we're sitting there, and now it breaks up. Jerry Howard, who was the OEM commissioner, was out there. We'll sit with Jerry, Charlie, Timmy Farrell, Danny Mess, and the whole bit. And I'm watching. So Jerry goes, what are you watching? I says, I don't know, Jerry. I said, weird guy here, the whole bit. So with that, I see this detective, Suffolk detective, catches up with him, asks him for the ID, hands him ID. I see him take it and put it in his pocket. And then he just he just rips the hat off his head that said Suffolk Police, takes it from him, and he kicks him out. He comes walking by. He goes, Patty, good call. I go, what's the story? He said, he's got a Suffolk undersheriff shield and ID card. It was a political thing. He supported the guy who was the sheriff at the time. So you get these honorary credentials and stuff. But meanwhile, he had a diagram of the Coast Guard station, where the slips were, where the dead bodies were, where the different tents were, and all this stuff. Because my friend took it from him. So you never know who you're dealing with sometimes at these scenes and everything.
Of course, yeah.
But it was, and we, like I say, we included that in there. But that was one of the things we had gone out and responded to and stuff at the time too. But then we got called by, again, rest his soul, Stan Reagan was the head of the ERT team at the time, if any of my FBI friends are on. And he called, he said, hey, I got your stuff. I had it drop ship right to the hangar at Calverton where we're putting the plane together. You guys want to come out? So we're like, Timmy, you want to go? He's nah, you guys go ahead. Take the take the Blazer and go out there. So we run out there, and so we pull in, we find him, we go into the hangar, and there's the 747 being put together in all the pieces and stuff. And we come past the front. He's, oh yeah, they just brought this section in, and he, we come walking past, and he says, it's the cockpit. I said, well, it's not just the cockpit. He said, what do you mean? I said, I looked at Charlie, and Charlie shakes his head, and we had worked together long enough. We knew what to signal. I go, there's a dead body in there. He goes, what? I go, there's a dead body in there. I go, you can't smell that? I mean, you could smell like this salt air and a whole bit, but behind that, you could smell a dead, decomposing body. So I go, Stan, it looks like a pile of wires. It's the cockpit. I said, but there's a dead body in there somewhere. I says, or something's dead in there. It ain't a fish. I says, it's human. Okay. As I drove the morgue truck long enough on overtime to know the smell of a DOA. Mm-hmm. So now they finished telling us the rest of the, we go down the line, and I end up meeting a couple of guys who I eventually would work with in JTTF when I got there. And so we got to tour the whole place and stuff. Then it was like, okay, load up all the boxes so we could put them back in our stock and go back to Floyd Bennett Field. So it was nice getting out of the city for the time and then seeing what they were doing, putting it back together and stuff too. So, I mean, it was really cool the way they did it. And it only got moved out of there, I think, like 5 or 6 years ago because they didn't know what to do with it. So I believe it was taken to some FAA site where they use it as a teaching tool and how to put a plane back together the way they did. I think like the recovery of the parts of the plane, I think was like somewhere around like 85%. I mean, when you looked at it when it was done, they built like the skeleton inside and attached everything to it.
And it was at that hangar for about a quarter century. They just finally took it down last year after it hit the 25-year anniversary. Yeah, but it was there a long time.
Yeah, my time, like I say, sometimes it flows past. But,
right.
Again, jobs and stuff like that. And I told you about the job before, and I got to tell, a lot of guys probably know it, but anybody else that doesn't, they'll get a good laugh out of it. I got flown up to 3 truck, and I'm working with Donald Dackey, who was a senior guy up there. And we had the 4-door cars at the time. And I was probably in about a year or so. Guys knew that I was an EMT before that and stuff like that. So, and anybody that had a trade, when it was a job that took place, that's who they would gravitate to. If you were a welder or a plumber or anything like that, that's who they would gravitate for the answer for that job. So we go and do, I think it was a DOA. So we get the ladder out. We had the new guy who was in SDS, Mike Rooney, redheaded Mike Rooney. And he was right in the back. So me and Donald are the same size, big old fat guys. And so it was like, okay, kid, get up the ladder and unlock the door and see if it's a DOA. First, banging the floor, yelling there, make sure there's no dog in there and stuff. And so sure enough, he opens the door, appreciate, oh, thank you guys, we appreciate the whole bit. So of course the rookie cop gets, stuck with the body, and they call for everybody and their brother, whatever they got to do. Squad's got to come, make sure it's, natural and not a homicide. So we leave, and I guess we were on either Cross Bronx or somewhere, and we get a call, go to Lincoln Hospital. And this is before 4 truck. So I think with that class, when Mike got out, I think that's when they opened 4, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And so we're going along, and they give us a job at Lincoln, and they don't tell us what it's just, got an 80 case at Lincoln, go over there. So Donald's like, so now you hear 3 truck base, Adam 3, 10-1 to base. So Donald's like, gee, what do they want? I go, listen, maybe they're giving us an excuse not to go to this job. So let's pull over. So we got to find a payphone in the South Bronx. Okay. That works. That's the other part.
No easy task.
Yeah. So Donald, we finally get one. I think we lucked out the first shot. So he gets in the car, and as he gets in the car, he goes, bunch of idiots. But he grabs my hand in the front and squeezes my hand, and he gives me like a little wink. Like, okay, something's up. He don't want to tell the new guy in the back. So we get to Lincoln's, the ER. We pull up in the lot. Say, Mike, he said, why don't you go in and see what we got? He goes, and me and Pat will get some tools together. So now I'm like, why would you send in the new guy, to figure out what's going on, and what tools are we going to take? So Mike gets about 20 feet away, so he's not within earshot. And Donald goes, "There's a guy in there with a wrench on his penis." I go, "What?" He goes, "There's a guy in there with a wrench on his penis." And I'm like, "Are you kidding?" He goes, "No." He says, let's follow the new guy. So here's these two dancing bears in blue uniform are trying to follow this little redheaded guy through the ER. All the nurses, they see an emergency cop, and they knew what we did. And so they're all laughing, but they're all pointing like to the end of the ER. And we watch Mike go into the room, and all of a sudden we just see him like backing out. And you talk about, he had bright red hair. His face went totally white because here's the guy laying there on the stretcher with that full mask with a 9/16 wrench, box end wrench on it. So we come in and we look at it, and Donald's like, "Patty," goes, "You're the medical guy. What do you think?" I go, You're the guy that's the plumber." I go, "What do you think?" I go, "We're gonna mess with this guy's plumbing." So here's the wrench is sitting there. It's a drop forged wrench. It's not something cheap, and he's a Spanish guy. So I go,
Why? Why does he have to be Spanish? That makes it worse.
Well, he was. It's just,
of course, me being Dominican and Puerto Rican, I could say that. That's why I say that.
Just try to talk to him, but he spoke good English. So I go, "Pal, what did you do? Why'd you put this on there?" "Oh man, I'm a diabetic and I have to go to the bathroom all the time, so I put that on there. I want to watch TV." I go, "Well, next time use an adjustable wrench, will you?" I go, "Don't put that over there." So now it's like Donald's like, "What do we do?" I go, "Donald, it's drop forge." I go, "It's not like we take a torch to it." I go, "Plus, you're talking about a piece of metal that's this big and like that thick, but we ain't breaking that too easy." Meanwhile, a doctor comes over and he says, "Yeah, I tried using this file," and you could see this little cut on it. It was like he barely scratched it. Okay, so he says to the nurse, he goes, "Oh, nurse, do me a favor. Can you get the Polaroid camera? I need a picture of this for the file." I go, "Can you make that 2 pictures? Because I need a picture of this also." I said, "This is going to go everywhere." It's somewhere buried in my garage with all my memorabilia and stuff. So come in. I said, "Donald," I said, "the only thing that we're going to do is it's the Wizard." He goes, "The Wizard Saw. It does 25,000 RPM. It's air driven. And it's used basically when you're getting a new muffler and stuff. That's what they use to cut all the bolts and cut everything out."
Right.
And I mean, 25,000 RPM. If we miss the mark or we slip, we're turning you from a rooster to a hen real quick. Okay. So it's like, so now Manny Hernandez and John Plato show up. They were back at quarters. "What do you need?" I said, "Listen, you guys tell me what you think, but I think it's drop forged steel. It's the only thing we got that's, other than the torches is the Wizard tool. We just got all new equipment like the year before. Chief Johnson had, like, when he found out the budget was like $120,000 a year for what they call OTPS, other than personal services, he bumped it up to 800,000, and we got all. I mean, I was new, but for E-Men to get a new tool, all right, it was Christmas. Okay, they backed in, and each truck it was a half a day. They could only deliver 1 truck each day or 2 truck each day, 2 deliveries of all the new, brand new, like 200-piece tool sets and chainsaws and you name everything was brand new. Right. It was like Christmas. So I said, the Wizard, I said, "Unless you got another idea." So like Manny's like, "Yeah, and I didn't know their backgrounds and stuff like that. Both great guys, Manny Hernandez and John Plato. And so we go out, we get the Scott bottle, we hook it all up. And Don's like, "All right, what are we going to do?" I says, "Okay." I get the nurse. I said, "Do me a favor. Get me like 2 big 100cc or 50cc syringes. It's like around this round and about maybe 5 inches long." I said, "If you can, a couple of the emesis basins so we can put some saline or even sterile water in there." And I said, "This way the guys can draw it off of there and just to shoot that on the metal as we're cutting." So Don goes, "How are we going to cut this?" I go, "Listen," I says, "you're going to put your hands down on the edge of the mattress." And I said, "You're going to hold the tool as steady as you can. And then," I says, "I'll take the other end of the wrench and I'll just move it in a little bit at a time." I said, "Manny, John," I says, "you take those syringes and alternating so that we're not out of water. We don't want to burn the guy because it's going to create the heat." I said, you squirt the water on, alternating from each syringe and drawing up and filling up again. So they're doing that. So here's the new kid, Mike, is standing, he goes, well, what do I do? And I think even people that are on here tonight that don't know me, you can tell them I'm a big jokester and stuff. I said, oh, Mike, I says, yours is the most important job. What's that? I said, well, as we're cutting, that steel dust is going to build up there. So I want you to blow on it real hard, okay? And he's like, okay. Whoa, wait a second. I ain't doing it. I said, I'm only kidding. The water is going to flush it all the way. But we all got a good laugh out of it and stuff like that. Well, when the guy heard, and when that wizard tool goes, it goes from 0 to 20, and it's like, and you could hear the guy scream. We weren't doing nothing to him, but we had, and so Donald said, I go, well, we got to make 2 cuts. We got to do it at like 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. We want that piece to fall off. I said, we can't just make 1 cut. He goes, well, yeah. I go, you ain't bending drop forge. He goes, oh, yeah, you're right. So I said, well, we got to do a cut at 9 and a cut at 3, and then that half will fall right off. So, boom, we get the first cut, and I guess it was irritating the skin a little. So I said, Matty, just keep putting water right where we made the cut already. We do the other cut, that piece falls off, and right down. That because when I talked, I go, Doc, can't you give him some medication? You give him Valium? Can you draw out the blood that's in it? He goes, no. He goes, if we put a needle in the penis, he says, we could hit nerves. It's very innovative. He goes, I'm sure you know. I said, yes, we all know that. He goes, if we do it wrong, we could do some damage. He's a diabetic already, so he probably has he mentioned some condition or whatever. So I was like, okay, then we're going to just do it all with the cut. And then when that second cut was completed, that piece popped off. And, man, the guy, was like, oh, man. So now that we had the picture of that. We had the original Polaroid. We took that picture. And Donald took the picture the next day and went to crime scene and had them blow it up into 8x10s. So now it went through the story went through the entire job. It ended up in Chief Johnson's office, okay? He finds out about it. He wants pictures. Well, when I got back to quarters, I used a lot of creative writing skills. And I said, using these tools, and you list all the tools on the ESD2, we made cuts at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock and cut out the section. And with great relief to the above listed aided, we were able to remove the tool from the penis and stuff. Well, the next day, Matty flew to 2 truck, and he was one of the first guys into computers. He had a printer and stuff back then and or whatever. And he comes up to quarters. The guys that were working already knew about it, and he had a certificate for me in excellence in penile rescue, with my name on it and everything else. But so, and he says, here, he goes, I know you wanted a copy of this ESD2. He goes, by the way, he goes, Chief Johnson already made calls. I go, why? What's the problem? We did it. He goes, yeah, but it's just like such a unique job. Well, we find out the next week he was speaking at Quantico at the FBI Academy to the I forget what they call them, but it's the National Academy where basically sergeants and above, and some departments send cops, go there for 3 months, and they go through FBI training and learn about all the things that the FBI can do. And now it's also physical and stuff too. So you got to be in good shape to go there. Well, he goes to give a lesson. He has them put it in the slide program. Well, from what we heard, the screen, because it's in an auditorium, is like 8 foot by 10 foot. And he pops on the thing, and there's this giant penis on an 8 foot by 10 foot screen. The picture that we took on the Polaroid is right up there. And it was gas, and then it was just yelling and laughing and everything else. He goes, and my guys did this. He says, no other department in the world that can do a job like this. And everybody's looking like, what is this? How did somebody do this, And I mean, when the word got back, it was just unbelievable. But, like I say, we had jobs up there. And I know you ask at the end anything that was like really good. I'm going to say it now because I'll forget it. I think I was working with Pete Conlon. I'm not sure. It could have been Jimmy Spratt. We were like right in front of the 2-8, and it's only 2 blocks from like 125th Street, or 3 blocks, I forget. And we hit 1013, 125, and 8, like a blood-curdling scream. So we're on it. We're like right there. I forget whether I was driving. No, you know what? I'm pretty sure it was Pete Conlon, because right away he's going for the shotgun. Like, we're going, the way the cops screamed, and it's the 2-8, we're going in.
Who, by the way, before you continue, had one of the greatest mustaches in ESU history. He doesn't have it now, tragically, but he did when he was in ESU. Let me tell you that.
Yes, he always did. He always did. And so we pull up, we jump out of the truck, and now we see there's a cab that's like into the sidewalk, like sideways. And the cops are there. I go, and they're like, get over here, over here. I'm like, okay, what's going on? We pull up, and here's a girl who's laying there. And Mike, if I tell you, her lower leg was hanging on by an artery.
Oh my God.
And maybe some ligaments and stuff. It was amputated.
Ooh.
So, and like I said, guys kind of gravitate to it. So Pete goes, I'm putting the shotgun away. I'm getting the first aid kit. And he goes, this is yours. And so I'm like, okay. And so they come back over. And it was right at the beginning of the tour. And with that, so he comes back over. I break out some fluids and stuff. I start flushing it out, debriding it, clean it out, because she's laying in the gutter on 125th Street and 8th Avenue. And so I'm flushing it all out. I'm getting all the stuff. I said, get me a splint, get me some bandages, because that would, more bandages. So I get a trauma dressing. After I washed it all down, I wet that, put it all around it. I get the splint on there. And now the EMS bus shows up, and I knew the guys were working there. And I said, get me the mask pants. And they said, okay, Pat, you got it. And so they get the mask pants, and he goes, because at that time we had already taken it. We had enough time. We took the vitals. He goes, I go, no, we're going to use it as a giant ass splint. I go, you didn't see it, but I said, she basically just had, you could see the artery pulsing. And if that popped, now she's got no circulation, and she could bleed out, okay? And we'd have to put an old-fashioned tourniquet on with a, Muslim bandage and stuff like that, and be twisting it with, popsicle stick or something like that, or a splint. So we're doing that. As that happens, I think it was Teddy Wright came down, and Teddy was a great guy. Teddy was like 6'7", 6'8". He was in emergency before me, and he comes up to the scene. And he goes, whoa, like, oh, I said, Teddy, get me, you got it, Patty, you got it. And so whatever I sent him to get, we come back. Now we got the mask pants on. The EMS lieutenant shows up, and just got her name was Connaughton. We called her Norton Connaughton. She was EMS lieutenant. She passed away a couple years ago from 9/11 disease. And I had known her beforehand from when she was an EMT on the bus. And she comes up. I said, listen, we got to get her to a reimplantation station. I said, and aviation heard the 1013, so they were right above us. Here's the choppers right above us. It was at the time the old Bell, the Jet Ranger. And I'm like, all right, that's not what we use. We need I think at the time we still had the Hueys. So, and I said, it's got to go through you, but I'm going to call for them. She goes, I said, do you agree? She's absolutely, Pat. She goes, we'll get it here. I says, yeah, it's like 4:30. The traffic's going to be horrible going down to Bellevue. At the time, I guess I didn't keep up with it. Didn't know that Montefiore was a reimplantation station. So she calls. She says, I'm with the issue. They recommend, I didn't see the wound. Need a helicopter. We got one above us. NYPD helicopters right above. So aviation come on and said, we're going to have the 412. They were already on their way. So the Huey's on their way. And they said, okay, go to Morningside Park. So we package her up. Now we got her. The mask pant is on the one leg blown up to cover it and to basically hold it still so that artery wouldn't touch the broken bone, and that would be it. So, we bring her over on the helicopter, and that's it. So now we do a regular 4 to 12 in Harlem and running on job from job and the whole bit. And so we get back to quarters later on after a while. And Teddy Wright, who I really look up to figuratively and really in his reputation being an emergency man, and realistically looking up. And like I said, he was 6'7". We get back in quarters. He goes, Pat, he goes, I've seen some guys who are getting EMTs. He goes, that was some job you did. I said, listen, I said, Teddy, he goes, I said, I worked at Bellevue. I said, when the reimplantation, I said, remember when that girl got run over got pushed in front of the train and lost her arm? She was a violinist. I said, I was working there then. So now Dr. Shaw, and I will never forget, I have a picture of it here, I think, somewhere. It was a New Year's Eve. I get a call. I'm a lieutenant now. I'm like the only lieutenant working in all of Manhattan. And meet the Coast Guard helicopter coming in at 34th Street. They got a 2-year-old, an arm to be implanted going to Bellevue. Okay. And so we go there, we meet them, boom, into the ER. And next thing you know, we're in the room. We're there. They're looking at it. We're in pediatrics, in the EW in pediatrics. And in comes Dr. Shaw in a tux. It's New Year's Eve. I think it was like right at midnight or right after midnight. He got the pager went off and in the car or a cab and right to the hospital. And he's looking at it, and the other doctors got it open and stuff like that, and looking at her arm. And she was at an ice skating rink, and she was only 2 years old. She fell down, and someone went right over her arm with the ice skate, and it cut her arm completely off. Yeah. And so now everybody wants to cry because you're looking at a 2-year-old and you're saying, you're looking, here's the arm sitting here and the bag of ice and the whole bit and saline, and here's the little girl, she's crying. They're trying to get a line in her and stuff like that. I came from New Jersey, and he just takes a look, turns to the head nurse who was there. He goes, get me an OR and page my team. And that girl's arm went back on a little girl. But originally when the girl with the violin and stuff, that became a big thing because they reimplanted it. I'm not sure whether she could play the violin again afterwards, but it was a big thing just getting her arm back on. Well, they started doing all these classes for us EMTs and medics at Bellevue because that was the place. And, then I think like a week later, some other EDP pushed somebody in front of a train and the leg came off. So again, they came in, but I think that one they couldn't, it was too mangled from the train. But we got these, they thought, okay, this is going to set a bunch of people. And here it is 30, 40 years later, and people still pushing people in front of trains.
Right.
But we went to the class. I said, Teddy, he said, well, them classes paid off. He goes, and then we get a pin job. No, actually, it was the next day we were in, and Vic Politi was the sergeant that day. We were out in the car. I forget who I was with. Vic comes up to the job, and I got the tool. He goes, hey, you got to call the CO when you get back. He says, Abruzzi called. He wants to talk to you. I said, Vic, we got to finish this job first. We're popping the door of the car. We're way up on like 207th Street. So go back to quarters. And like I say, no cell phones back then. So I call the office, and I get Pete Dowling. I said, Pete, Papo. He's, yeah. He goes, Chief Abruzzi wants to talk to you. So I get on the phone. I say, Chief, and I knew him. He was the DI in Midtown North when I was there. He was only there about 9 months. And then he went to DCPI. And then after the whole bumpers incident, he went to emergency, I guess, to handle the press stuff that would happen after a while. And at the time, the job thought that the CO of emergency was kind of too cozy because of the Sullivan thing. Every guy in emergency put in transfer to get out of emergency. Guys like me were asked to rescind our request to go to emergency and stuff in protest of everything that happened to Steve Sullivan getting indicted and stuff. So we did. And I figured, okay, I'll never see emergency, but it was forgotten about. But Abruzzi came there. So I'm like, I still don't know. Vic, I go, Vic, he goes, I don't know. He goes, he wants to talk to you. I'm not even thinking about the day before. I'm thinking, what did I screw up in the last week? Or what did I do? Or did I call somebody a name? Or did I call a boss a name or whatever? And so he gets on. He goes, so he started with the serious part first. He goes, sounds like it was a good job up there yesterday. He goes, but why'd you call for a helicopter? He goes, that we can't request it. I go, boss, I said, aviation was right above. I said, right next to me was the EMS lieutenant. Her name is Connaughton. I think her name was Madeline, if I'm not mistaken. It's just, I'm forgetting, and I feel bad because she, like I said, passed away, and she was
That's
really
my mom's name.
So, I go, well, she was right next to me. And I said, do you concur? She says, yeah. I said, and I know she's got to approve it, being the field supervisor. So I said, she was right next to me. She said, yes. And that's why I put it right over that aviation, would land maybe with that one and whatever. But the girl was like 15 years old. So he goes, I got to tell you something. He goes, great job. Because I'm getting phone calls all day. He said, evidently, he says, your guys that you know from Harlem Hospital, the word went down the chain. Tell the guys on ambulance, whatever it was at the time, did a great job in packaging her up. So when it got to Connaughton, she told him, she goes, it wasn't our guys, it was ESU that packaged her up. So now it goes back up the chain, through EMS. They called the doctor back and they said it wasn't our people. They just transported her. When they got there, she was basically already being treated by ESU. It was ESU cops. And now it was also, they knew it was me. So there was an ESU cop that's a former EMS lieutenant, and he knows what he's doing. So he goes, I really want to thank you. He said, to get a phone call for once, that's something good, that somebody in emergency did something great. He goes, it's really appreciated. And then Teddy flew back, like I say, and Teddy was like, man, he goes, I can't believe the job you did. I said, well, we just got a call from the CO and stuff like that. I said, it feels good. And it was one of those real gratifying jobs. I knew I probably saved her life and hopefully saved a leg. We found out like a week later. We never ended up like going to the hospital and seeing her. So I never know what happened to her and stuff like that. I knew she lived like right up the block in the projects on 125th Street. But, it was one of those jobs where you went back and you went, you know what? I feel good about myself today.
You should. As you should.
Yeah, no, I listen, there was so many jobs. Guys in emergency, whether you're an EMT or not, save lives. You could hear jobs, and then you hear about it when it gets out from that truck, what they did and what went on. It was just like you sat there and you're like proud to be in an organization that saves somebody's life every day. It's just, and like I said, we were the lucky ones. We had, we're with the Roland Craftsman Toolbox going down the street and doing everything. We had all the tools. We had the extra training, or you brought in a skill, and the cops on the street were dealing with, they had maybe their briefcase and stuff like that. They kept some paperwork in, and they didn't have anything. Even radio cars back then didn't have first aid kits. They didn't have nothing, unless a guy was an EMT. There was nothing for them to do except wait for us to get there, or use their hands to put compression on somebody. If they were shot, throw in the back of a radio car and get them to the hospital, and then now, it's to the point where now you've got all the guys, we have our tactical medics in the issue. They have their own ambulance and stuff.
Which is
a barricade job, it gets called out and they're on the scene. So, but the thing was, and all my EMS friends, in the years I was up in Harlem or bouncing all the way around the city, but mostly up in Harlem because a lot of them knew me and I worked with a lot of them up there. We'd be on a barricade job, a guy with a gun, and I'd look down the stairs and there they were, and somebody give me a tip of the hat, we're here. And they were on our backs and right there. And if we recovered somebody was shot, bing, bang, boom, right to them.
Right.
The EMS is the unsung heroes. And look what happened to the lieutenant, 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
And the EMT up in the Bronx.
Yep.
They don't get the recognition. They don't get the money. They should be paid at least as a cop. I said, and I've said it to them a few times, you should get paid at least the same as a cop or fireman because of the knowledge you have to have and be out there. And the cops and firemen in New York City don't get paid. Right now, the cops in the city are 6 years without a contract. It's just, it's terrible.
It's too expensive to live in the city, too, because I understand why a lot of them live in Long Island or Rockland County or even Westchester, because who can afford it? Even like the Staten Island would be the place, but even then, Amanda Farinacci, who's the FDNY press secretary, she's been on this show for the Best of the Bravest. She was saying it's starting to get more expensive to live out there.
Yeah,
so it's
very
tough.
Just to show you, before my mom passed away, I happened to be in there and in Belrose and stuff. And like I say, civil service community and stuff like that. And what was nice about Belrose, why a lot of cops and firemen lived there, and anybody moved there, you could jump on the Croissant Parkway to the Southern State and go to Brooklyn, go to the Belt, or go north, go to the LAE, to Grand Central, or over the bridge into the Bronx, or Hillside Avenue, Jamaica Avenue, get on the bus, 179th Street to the subway, or just walk a couple of blocks more from Jamaica Avenue into Nassau County and get on Long Island Railroad to Penn Station. Yeah. So the community was great. And my parents bought that house in December of 59 for $10,099. Wow.
How much would it go for today in 2022?
Well,
almost 23.
The thing is, I don't know the exact thing because the person took it and it was a 2-bedroom bungalow, and they added a second floor. My cousin just went past it. My cousin Kathleen and Julie went past. They took a picture. I had seen it once before, and I passed by real quick.
Mhm.
And they added a second floor to it. That's what everybody did there. So we sold it, I think, for $364. It had been up before that, before the crash in 08. That house, a 2-bedroom bungalow on a 30 by 60 piece of property, was $600,000.
Jesus.
And I was telling my mother, I go, Ma, listen, sell a house. It's just you and Sean, which is my nephew. What about Sean? I go, listen, you can get 600. There's no way we're getting 600. I go, Ma, that's what they're going for. I go, and they're going for more. This is the original kitchen. Nothing's been improved, the whole bit. I said, give him $100,000. Let him go get a condo or something. He was working as a waiter in a restaurant. He eventually went to the Coast Guard. And I said, give him $100,000. Let him go get a condo somewhere. I says, or whatever, And so she's like, no. Then the crash hits, and then she passed away. So now I start looking, and it's 364. Now that same house, especially if they're putting the top on, but even without it, I was just watching a thing yesterday, and it was, I forget who actually put it on, but they were talking about like with a cop or fireman's salary, that an average house in Queens is $768,000. And the guy figured out that you had to work, you needed so much to put down. You needed like $400,000 to put down on it in order to get this like almost 7% mortgage right now. When we sold the house, it was like, I think the mortgage rates were down to like 4%, which is really cheap. When I was first looking, when I first got married in 1980, the mortgage rates was 17%. But the house I was looking at was only $48,000, a 2.5-story colonial down the block from my mother.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which realistically you could save up for, but that's almost $1 million. How are you going to save up that much money?
Exactly. And you're on a cop salary, cop or fireman salary. You're not even making $100,000 a year as the base salary.
No, you're not.
It's terrible, and you're forced to work a lot of overtime. And what does that do? It takes you away from your family.
Yeah.
Well, it is what it is. But
and that's why so many of them in the FD, it's the same thing. They have second jobs.
Yeah,
you can understand it. Very rarely will you find the cop or the fireman that does not have a second job.
Exactly. Yep. But like I say, it's tough for these guys. My nephew is on a job now. He's on about a year and a half. Actually, in January, it'll be 2 years. When he went on, I said to him, I said, listen, I says, which shield do you want? You want mine or you want Grandpa's? Because my father went on in 52. So I would like yours. I said, okay. So I called up the shield desk and stuff. And like I told you beforehand and stuff with my detective shield, what we did with that. But I called up, and again, the women there were so nice. I said, yeah. I said, how you doing? I said, I'm looking for shield number 28957 or 16732. I says, mine was 28957. And she's, well, that one's out. I said, okay. So what's the other one? I said, 16732 is available. I said, okay. I says, could you save that? I said, and this is the recruit's name. He's in the academy now. He'll be graduating, I think, in a month or whatever. No problem. I was like, really? I was like, you're kidding. So I said, thank you so much. I said, I've had to call a few times. I said, reserving shields. I said, and I think I said it to one of the girls back then. I said, I would have never left if I get treated like this on the job all the time. I said, you guys never say no. You do the right thing. And I thought I hung up. I was on my cell phone. I thought I hit the button, but then I hear it talking. And I guess, listen, cops can be cops, and they come in. Some guys are bitter when they retire, and they're throwing their shield into the basket, and they're probably very short with these people and stuff. And they're civilians. And that retired detective was so nice. He was thanking me up and down that we always do the right thing. He's called a couple of times, and I'm like, and I'm hearing this on the other phone. I'm like, hello, like try to tell him like you didn't hang up. But to hear, it was just sad to hear them the way they get treated sometimes, I guess. It's civilians,
it's not fair.
But right. And again, they did the right thing. My nephew has my dad's shield. My father got it in 1952, so basically 70 years ago he got it. And they say he went into Harvard and all that stuff and the whole bit. And my shield, when I retired a week later, I was in the firehouse, and Kevin Kershaw, who you did an interview with him already,
Yeah, great guy.
We're in the Massapequa Fire Department here, and he's in Engine Company 5. I'm in Rescue Company 3, and we're both ex-captains. And he comes in the firehouse, and he's got the cigar in his mouth, the whole bit. His wife just had a baby girl that morning, and she's now in college. And so he comes in. I say, hey, he's just had a baby. All right, congratulations. He's giving cigars to the guys, the whole bit. And then his phone goes off, and he gets a call. Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, no kidding. Oh, okay. Hey, Kev, you gonna let us in? He goes, yeah. He says that was one truck call. And he goes, 3 truck called, said the guy that I was in the shootout with last year up there that you came to. He says they convicted him this morning. He goes, and the retro check is in, and I'm getting promoted to detective tomorrow. So
life is good.
I said, wow. I says, and he's a big hockey player as well. I said, you got the what do you call it? The 3 hat deal there,
Yeah, the hat trick.
The hat trick, He says, oh yeah. So I said, hey, I know Gerard retired with a white shield and stuff. And I said, Jimmy's in Port Authority. I said, did you have any family with detectives? He goes, no. Why? I said, well, I'm figuring you can get it. But I said, hey, listen, I said, I was the first one to have my shield, and I gave it in last week. I said, would you wear it? He goes, Patty, I'd be honored to wear it. So I said, all right. He goes, I'll call Jin Yee right now, who's now Chief Yee, who I came into emergency service with. That was the name I forgot in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But Jin is the assistant chief in the Staten Island Borough Command, a great guy. And so he's calling him. I call the shield desk. And here it was, I retired a week before. And so the girl's like, well, you're probably going to come back after terminal. I said, no. I said, that's it. I'm out. I'm not coming back. I said, and if I do, we'll figure something out, or I'll take another shield. No big deal for a couple more years. So she goes, okay, what was the name? I said, Kirschler Kevin, ESS 1. Said, okay. I'm like, what? She goes, okay, it's done. I go, it's done? I go, we don't have to do nothing else? She goes, no. She goes, we didn't get to him. She goes, otherwise we would have just changed it. That's all. And I'm like, she's, why? What's the matter? I go, had I been treated like this my entire career, I never would have left the job. I said, you girls are great. So Kevin got it the next day. He comes in the firehouse, and, he's got the shield on. I get to see my shield a week later. But now he retired. I had it reserved again. And my partner, Charlie Rupert, who retired just before I went to the Terrorist Task Force, his son is in truck 1. And he was on a grid. So I called, and I got one day it was me, Charlie, and Kevin were in the firehouse at the kitchen table. And I said, hey, I says, you two are here. I said, you got any problem with me reserving my shield that Kevin had for Pat, Charlie? He goes, no. He says, that'd be great. He goes, Charlie retired with a white shield. And Kevin goes, yeah, no, that's great. We'll keep it with somebody we know, and keep it in the family of the firehouse. So it took, there was like, he should have been promoted at that point, but it was held up with his whole group that came into emergency. And then he got promoted the day that Mike Hansen got buried. So, and we were up there. He had just found out, so made it up to the funeral, up to the wake and stuff. He goes, all right, we're going tomorrow. So I took one picture with Charlie and his son, still wearing Charlie's original police officer shield, who was Charlie's grandfather's shield. And now his other son, when that came available, his other son who was in the academy, Chuck Rupert, who's in Midtown North, he got Charlie's shield. So we've been shuffling the shields around from body to body as everybody gets promoted or retired, or, the whole thing. So, but it's great knowing my shield is on. A real good cop. Him and my son used to hang around. Me and Charlie would come around the corner, coming to my house, and they'd be out in the front, rappelling out of the tree in front of my house and stuff like that. But it's 2 kids from emergency. Their fathers, they hear all the stuff all the time, So, but Pat's been in emergency now. God, it's got to be close to 10 years. But it's great to keep the traditions going and stuff too, and that's the issue, a lot of traditions. So
naturally, in 92 years, before we get to the rapid fire, this has been a heck of a show. This is a top 5 show, my friend. This is a top 5 show I've ever done. I didn't even have to do anything. I just sat back. I put it in the chat earlier. I'm just going to sit back and let them drop.
Yeah, well, as they always used to say, if I'm around the table, your ears will be bleeding from the stories later on. I had more stories than Mother Goose. So
I do have the photo. It doesn't show the baby, but it's you and the girl. And this is
no, that's not me.
Oh, I see. Okay, I thought that was.
I can't wait. I can't wait. That's Bobby Kennevan.
Oh, okay.
And if
I've heard of him.
If you look at that, there's not a hair out of place on his head.
Yeah.
Okay. He never wore a hat. All right. And what I would do when I would fly down to one truck, they caught on eventually and stuff. They put it away. But go in the bathroom there, and here's the blow dryer hanging. And so I go in, and I would either reach on the counter, and it was either Comet cleansing powder or talcum powder. And I would put it into the blow dryer, clean it all off. So now here they are from being out the night before or staying over. A lot of guys had second jobs, so they would stay over in quarters. They wake up for the day tour, and boom, in the shower, come out, and now pick up the blow dryer, poof, and cover with all the talcum powder and stuff like that. But Bobby's a great guy, really good. We used to kid around him all the time and stuff like that. But he eventually left and went to the Brooklyn DA squad and became a tech guy doing all the, the wiretaps, all that type of stuff. But great guy. And he was partners with Paulie Kaczynski. So.
And Ray Ruiz gave me 2 more photos. And thanks, Ray, for these great photos that you sent tonight. You guys on the bridge.
There we are on the bridge. Yeah.
Yep. And then, of course, this one, too. The Spandastics.
Yep. Actually, and we were actually in, what's the Guinness Book of World Records? There's a whole page on that. I never saw it. It wasn't until later on that Bob Swanson, he was a lieutenant that did the climb with us. He actually got it's like a comic type thing, framed and all that. And I saw it when he was a commissioner in the Syosset Fire Department. I was up in his office. I saw, there that is. You never saw it? I said, no, we never got that. But it was actually in Guinness Books of World Records. I forget for practice at a height or something like that. But listen, I got it. Going back to STS, I had no problem with heights really. And going through everything, we were going to climb the Brooklyn Bridge. We go out there, and Sergeant Riley, who was in charge of the school at the time, we get there, and there's ice all over the thing. And I really wanted to climb the Brooklyn Bridge. That's like, that's it, man. I climbed the Brooklyn Bridge and went up, and I'm an E-man now. We get there. He goes, nah, we're not going. There's ice on the cable. I go, well, Sarge, what if some guy was up there? He goes, well, we wait till it thaw out, and he'll come down eventually, whether he jumps over the side or, he walks down. So we end up not doing it. And, but we still, the one thing I was, for some reason, I was deathly afraid of was rappelling in the helicopter. So it comes down, it's the last day, and it's a rainy, foggy day, the whole bit. So there's nothing to do. Basically, that's our last day. We're going to be waiting for the captain to come and do our graduation, which, like I said, he just read off where we're going. And so Jeff Kelcher was one of the instructors. He comes in, he goes, it's a go with aviation. I'm like, did they look outside? It's raining out. It's foggy out. I go, you sure about this? So now I'm sitting there. The anxiety's building up. I really didn't want to do it, but like, hey, you got to do it. Like they'll tell you, if you're afraid of heights, you stop to tie your shoe at the foot of a bridge, and the guys will leave footprints on your back going up the bridge to grab the guy. So we're sitting there, and they gave the order, and I was going in the second 2 guys to go. So, and they did it by weight because you're going out each side of the helicopter at the same time. So I'm sitting there, and I said, I got to switch. And I forget who I switched with. It might have been John Coughlin. And I say, John, he said, I thought you didn't want to do this. I said, I want to do it and get it over with. And that's it. Earn my helicopter wings, and I'll never do it again. So I go, who you with? He goes, it's me and Richie Teamsma first. I said, oh, okay. I go, Rich, it's me and you. He goes, you kidding? He goes, I thought you. I says, I know. I want to get it over. So we go out to the helicopter, and because we're the first ones, we get in beforehand. Stevie Simsek and Jeff Kelch, rig everything up. And now they started up. Well, Mike Corr comes running over at the last second I see him hand the pilot a cassette tape. So the pilot puts it in, and it's I hear pouring rain outside, so the Yankee game must be delayed.
It's in rain delay, now.
So he puts it in, and it's the Flight of the Valkyries, and the helicopter is starting up, and it's the old Huey, and all I'm hearing is like dun, 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 and that's like a really cool song. So now my blood is starting to go a little bit. The helicopter's shaking, sitting on the little trailer, and we take off. And the guy says, listen, guys, we got to take a little ride to make sure it's really warmed up. I said, well, take a long ride and make sure it's really warmed up because I don't want this thing coming down. Naturally. And so we go up, and okay, it's ready. Boom, we're already tied in. And Richie says to me, hey, when we go halfway down, let's stop and just take a look around. I go, Rich, he goes, what are they going to do? gonna get rid of it. They ain't gonna fire us. So halfway down now, I'm like really into it. I step out on the skid, and it's like they give us the sign, go over the side, and my heart's pounding. I'm like, wow, this is great. I'm coming down. I look over Rich, and he goes like this, and we stop. We look around a little bit, and I'm like, here we are, I think we only did maybe 50, 60 feet, but it's still pretty cool. And
of course, yeah.
Here I am, 285 pounds, 6'3", hanging on a rope, and so I'm looking around, and it's like, okay. So he goes, all right. We go down, we hit the ground, and Richie Green, who was the sergeant that was in emergency with us, he was tending me, so he was on the ground. I come down, and the thing was, because now me and Richie were both big guys, between the both of us, we were pretty close to 500 pounds. So when our weight hits the ground, the helicopter's going to go up. So we got to really rip out a lot of rope through the figure eight to make sure we don't get pulled up when the ship goes like 5 or 10 feet in the air. So we're pulling the rope. I fall on the ground, and I'm laughing. And Richie goes, "Patty, you all right? You all right?" I go, "Richie, that was the greatest." I'm like, I said, "I'm doing it again." He goes, "I thought you didn't want to do it." I go, "I love it now." I ended up becoming a rappel master. I ended up out there for a week. We were doing 300-foot rappels. I just loved it. It was one of those things till I actually did the helicopter and like it, and, same thing. You're up on the cornice of a building and a guy is going to jump and stuff. And you're looking down, and we had the pretty tall projects in Harlem. Some were 30 stories tall. One of which my partner was Billy Waters. We got there pretty quick. We got upstairs. Guy is out on the ledge. And so we start walking our way out. And I said, "Billy, the two cops were like standing back in the thing. Like, hey, he's out there." So I was like, got the vibe. They didn't want nothing to do with it. They didn't want to be out there. So I said, "Billy, we're gonna use the line." I says, "Not one guy. We're both gonna use it, and we'll tie off, and we'll go out together." So we get the good anchor and stuff. We tie it off. We both walk out. We're adjusting the rope as we go. Get out there. We're talking to the guy, and so finally, you always worked out with your partner like an eye sign. You winked or whatever, or count to 10 if the guy took the cigarette that you offered, we offered, I don't know how many jumpers, very stale cigarettes, because you always kept a pack of cigarettes in your Laracus bag to offer a cigarette, and you just grabbed them. So here we are up at one of these projects. I think it was over on the east side, like 116, 117, I want to say. And so we're working our way close. And finally, I give Billy the eye because the guy turned away and I go, and we grab him. And it ended up from the street, all they could see was me. And I just grabbed him around the knee and I pulled him back in. And Billy too. Billy jumped up high. Billy we used to call him Jim Thorpe. He was a tremendous athlete. So we grab him, we throw him on the ground, cuff him the whole bit. We're walking him out downstairs, and we get all our stuff together. And we're walking out with the precinct. And of course, everybody from the project's there. And there's this one young kid. He goes, "Man," he goes, "who LT'd that guy up there?" And I go, "That would be me." He goes, "Man," he says, "you should have played for the Giants with LT." He says, "That was some tackle you made," And it was just, and you never thought of it before that, you're up 30 stories and someone's watching and seeing what you're doing and stuff. And it was, a young kid, like 14 or 15. He goes, "Man, I want to do that when I get older." I said, "Well," I said, "stay in school." I said, and just don't get in any trouble. I go, "It's kind of tough around here. I know it's a tough neighborhood, but," I said, you gotta keep your nose clean." He goes, "What do you mean keep my nose clean?" I go, "It's an old term." I said, "But you got to stay out of trouble." I go, "No, it's really hard." But I said, "It's a good job." And I said, "You can do this too." I said, he says, "Yeah, you guys are the SWAT team too, right?" I go, "Yeah, we're the SWAT team also." Which brings back with Mojo, when we got Mojo, and I know Ray talked about him and stuff, but we all used to take him out on patrol and stuff. And we had him out with us and stuff, and we pulled up, went on a job. Me and Charlie go inside. We had him inside the cab of the 4-door, and we come down, and all the kids, because they all see him. Now, Mojo would lick you to death. He was a boxer, but they all thought he was a pit bull. So they're like, "You cops got pit bulls?" I go, "No." I said, "That's a boxer." I said, "They're bred in Japan to kill." I said, "The emperor had them to kill bears." He goes, and the kid's like, "What?" I go, "Yeah." I says, "He'll kill a bear my size or even bigger." I made it up on the spot. You had to be quick and you had to be good. And they're like, "Wow." So I let him out, and now he jumps up on the kid. He's like licking his face. He goes, man, he seems awful friendly. He'd want to kill a bear. I go, yeah. I said, believe me, we got one of the good ones. I said, as far as that goes. We used to take him out on patrol. Great dog, And again, I think he was a product of the environment up there. We had the trucks, we had the cars, and now everything went to diesel. And they took him in a couple of times. He had always had these bloodshot eyes. And one of the guys said, we got to take him in. That's not right. And we all had dogs. And that was the other part. We all would take him on vacation somewhere. If you went somewhere, guys, would take a picture of him in front of whatever sign it was and stuff like that. We also, there was a big ram's head in the kitchen. And what happened was, I think it goes back to Frankie LaSalle was involved in it. And a couple of guys from War Truck, they stole a ram's head. So it went back and forth between One Truck. We got it back. And then I forget what they had, a small bull's head or something in One Truck. So we stole that. So Sergeant Timmy Frawley was getting married and going on his honeymoon. Well, one of the guys was like 1 day short of being in Hawaii at the same time as Timmy on his honeymoon. So they were like calling us all, you better bring that thing back here, blah, 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 threatening us. And it was all a lot of laughs, all the stuff we did to each truck did different things to each other. So we find out, I go, hey, Frawley's going out. Maybe we can ship it out to Hawaii or something to the hotel, like as a gift box. And I said, then he'd be forced to carry this thing back on the plane with him, So George goes, well, when's he get married? I said, well, I think like 3 weeks. He goes, well, I'm on vacation and I'm going to Hawaii. He said, we got to find out the date. Well, it was the day before. And George, somehow we found out the date and the hotel. And George was like leaving the night before, like 12 hours before. George takes this with him all the way to Honolulu, Hawaii, goes to him and said, this has got to go in the room on the bed of Timothy Frawley. They're coming in tomorrow morning or tomorrow after 9 or whatever. Timmy comes in, he's with the new wife, opens the door, and there's the bullhead sitting on the bed. Okay. And I mean, he had to bring that all the way back from Hawaii and stuff like that. So, we said, hey, we got it back. You guys got it back. Yeah, in Hawaii. But, he had to bring it back all the way and stuff. So, yeah. But, like I say, there's not a guy or girl in emergency that would ever leave another guy, another E-cop in a hallway. We had everybody's back all the time. It's just the camaraderie that was there is like no other. I've been a volunteer fireman for a long time, and there's good camaraderie there. I'm, in the fire department, I know how good it is. But same thing in emergency. I mean, we had some really great cops, some really great people, and great bosses too. I don't want to forget that either. And the other story that I told you about before, the Jack Cabrier story, and you wanted to wait a little while.
Yeah, of course.
Jack and I came up together to two truck, me, Mike Core, and Jack. So I was working like the first week or whatever. And when I fell into my schedule, we had a sergeant there. He was known by a couple of names. And he was a bit eccentric, let's put it that way. And so he says to me, all right, come on, big guy too. He's like my size, like 6'2", 6'3". And he goes, come on downstairs. So I go, you know what? No. And Petey Baba and Bobby Schnebley were up in quarters. And so they're like giggling a little, knowing that there's something going on with this guy. He takes me downstairs to the tool room, which is now the armory where all the long guns for each guy who's issued a long gun has it in there, kept secure, was the tool room. And in the barrel in the corner was what they called an entrenching barrel, that it was a 55-gallon drum and the top and bottom were cut out. So if you had somebody in a trench collapse, you'd put it over them and you'd start digging out underneath them, and eventually would go down. You could hang oxygen in there, the whole bit. But if there was a secondary collapse, as you're putting up shoring and all that stuff, but even back then, they didn't even do that. They would just be digging out with this guy in the barrel if they were still sticking out and they were viable. Otherwise, it was a recovery job. So all the small tools were hanging in there. We go downstairs to that room, and the sergeant says, he goes, this is the Stokes basket. It's got, you know what you need this for? Well, yeah. I says, if we hook up the lines, we can bring somebody down from a high angle on a rescue, or bring them up from underneath the ground. We can tie them in, lower them straight up and down, a whole bit. Yeah. But it's got a bunch of other uses. So I'm like, okay. He says, you got any more ideas? I come up with like 2 or 3 more ideas. Well, a floater, we could lower it down in the water underneath the floater, and we just get the body and the water goes out and stuff like that. Yeah. So he goes, you can use this for an EDP. He goes, the hell with that shield that you got there. He goes, it's just a plastic shield. He goes, you put this in front of you. He goes, this will fit into the average doorway in an apartment. There might be a little room on either side. I'm like, okay.
Right.
And again, I got the lecture from Johnny Elton the week before. Keep your eyes open, your ears open. You're going to learn. So as eccentric as this guy was, he says, this will protect you. He said, you can see the EDP. He said, well, if you got a dog or whatever. Okay. So he says, grab a tool out of there. So I go over. I said, what do you mean? He says, grab a tool. Just grab a tool. Get that crowbar. I'm like, okay. Or he says, grab the hatchet. So I got a hatchet in my hand. He goes, now throw it at me. And he's standing behind the basket. And it's chicken wire and the framing of it. Okay. So I'm like, he goes, throw it at me. I go, what? He goes, I told you, throw it at me. So I'm like, Sarge. He goes, throw it at me. So I kind of give like a not enthusiastic throw. He goes, you're a big guy. Now throw it at me. I'm like, okay. So I take it and I kind of like, and I let it go. It goes right through the chicken wire, hits him in the shin, through the dark blue pants. I just see bright red blood coming out.
Ugh.
And I'm like, I just hit the sergeant with a friggin' axe. He goes, now you see? And he puts the basket to the side and he's limping. He goes, now if it didn't slow it down, I really would have got hurt. And now the blood is like running down his leg and there's a pool of it on the floor. And I'm like, wouldn't it? If it would have slowed, it looks like it hurt you. He goes, clean up the mess, put that back, put the tool, and he goes limping away. Now I put everything back, and as I'm going up the stairs, here comes Petey and Bobby. What did you do to him? And I told them the story, and they are on the floor laughing. But there's a trail of blood from the tool room downstairs all the way up the stairs into the bathroom. And I go in there, Sarge, you okay? Yeah, just a minor scratch. Don't worry about it. But meanwhile, there's like a pool of blood and a trail of blood up the stairs all the way. So, all right, so Petey and Bobby are laughing and stuff. And I'm like, I go, is he nuts? They go, yeah. I go, okay, at least now I know. So the next week I'm in on days. Jack comes in. He bounces in or he changed the tour. And the sergeant says, Jack, come on. I want to take you downstairs. So I go, I got to go see this because I want to see this all over again. But anyway, Gentleman Jack, being Gentleman Jack, he kind of just, gave it a throw. He already knew the story because everybody in the whole truck knew it. I think it went around every squad in the city. And, but Jack was a gentleman about it. But me and him, we come in for a roll call, and me and him we're flying to 3 truck. I'm like, okay, when we get up there, they'll put us with experienced guys. But our squad in 3 truck, the 5th squad, were old timers. And they didn't want to be broken up. So when we get there, Sergeant Bill Manos, who rest his soul, I mean, the guy was a sergeant in the Marines on Guadalcanal. He got stabbed in the heart down in the South Bronx, right through the heart. Died, I think, once or twice. I forget what the story was, but died in Lincoln's emergency room after being stabbed in the heart by an EDP. And they got him back. He didn't owe this city nothing, and he came back to work and worked till he was like, I think he was aged out. Nicest guy in the world. He just had his pipe, and as he used to say, if you wait long enough, you'll get it. They would have canceled World War II. In other words, don't rush to a job. Hear what's going on and listen to what's going on over the radio, and then you get there and you know what's happening. So we go up there and say, okay, you guys are in the boy car. We're brand new. We only came out of STS too. He's got his pipe. He goes, don't worry, boys. You'll figure it out. You're E-men now. He goes, I don't care whether you're a week or 10 weeks. He goes, you'll figure it out. Okay. So we get a call up on Olmsted Avenue, and it comes over as a dog bite. We get there. We find out it was a pit bull. Girl was standing in the bus stop for school, and the pit bull jumped up and basically basically ripped her face, the whole mask, as they call it, the mask of her face. Like the way he opened up and clamped down on her, ripped off like the whole mask of her face.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't know, they just told us this kids are still crying. There's men and women there are crying because the girl was like maybe grammar school age, like I forget what it was, 7 or 8, 9, 10 years old. So we get there, they go, oh, the dog is in the house. And it's the family that owns the dog. So we go in and they go, it's in the bedroom. We hear it we just hear like noises coming at things, bing, bang, boom. It was like the World Wrestling Federation was in there. And so I said, Jack, we got to pop a hole in this Luan door to see what's going on. So we go down. Maybe he ran down and he got like a mini Halligan and stuff like that. We pop a little hole. And I look in, I go, is this like his room? I said, there's all straw all over. So the family's like, straw? I said, yeah. I says, it looks like straw. I go, it's all over the place. And I says, he's like chewing on something. So I go, here, take a look. I says, you tell me what it is. He looks and he goes, oh my God, where'd all the furniture go? The dog shredded the furniture in the room.
Wow.
It looked like it was, there was a finish on all the wood, but it was to raw wood and it was just all over. It looked like it was a stable with brand new yellow straw. So I'm like, he goes, oh my God, he ate the table. He ate the chair. And Jack is like, he looks in. He's like, he goes, what are we going to do? I go, whatever we do, we're going to do it very carefully.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? I said, Jack, as crazy as it sounds, I said, I think this is a time for the Stokes basket in the door trick that Calora taught us. He goes, yeah, you're right. We can use the dart gun and push open the door. And man, that dog came at us. I mean, when I pushed open that door, he must have been waiting. He must have had a sixth sense, or she actually, because it was a pregnant female. And supposedly the rompum that we used to use, and the ketamine and stuff, the mixture that they made of them, because of the different enzymes in the dog when they're pregnant and stuff like that, and hormones and stuff, the ketamine didn't work that well. So they always told you, if you see that the dog is pregnant or just had puppies, it may not work as quick. You're going to have to wait like a half an hour, 40 minutes before the dog knocks out. Well, set it all up. I says, use the bigger one that you can put there. I said, it definitely looks like a female. I asked the family, oh, yeah, she had pups like a month ago. I'm like, oh, great. And so now it's like, okay, I reach around and I push the door, and now I take the mini Halligan and I push open the door. Well, that door came up, and I had all I could do to hold that basket. And I didn't want my fingers sticking through. So I'm like kind of holding it this way and kind of had it wedged to the door and stuff. And that door came up, and all I saw was teeth. It's grabbing the wire, and it's just like, chewing on. I'm like, oh, man. And Jack had the guy. I said, you ready? And I just stepped. He's, yeah. And got it like right in the chest. And here we are. I was like, all right, we're going to be here for a while. Like about a minute later, all of a sudden the door just went boom, right down. And we're like, wow, this is unbelievable, And it's like, all right, I says, let's get it now. We go in and it's kind of, now they take them and they have the small little carry kennels for the dogs and stuff like that. When we did it was kind of caveman style. You went in, you took the electrical tape, you put it around their snout so that they couldn't bite, and hopefully they stayed out. And then the precinct would just take them and put them in the car. But when they went to the ASPCA, they'd have to tell them, hey, listen, we got a dog. ESU shot it with the ketamine. And so they knew enough to open it real closely. And they were great with the noose. They would be able to get the noose on them real quick. And they very rarely had a problem. But the best was when you would get a dog job, you'd get there and the sergeant's like, oh, man, this dog is wild. It's never. And after a while, I had dogs and stuff like that.
Right.
So sometimes if I had them, if I remembered, I would take some dog biscuits from home and stuff and have them with me. So, here it is. The dog is going wild. I just throw a couple of dog biscuits in and he's your best friend. And you went in there, or I'd have my glove on and just kind of shake it in front of them. And if they, snarled and went after your glove, okay, I lost a construction glove. I'll just go buy another one. But a lot of times, all of a sudden you'd see them wagging their little butt and the tail and stuff like that. And they walk right up to you. And I go, all right. And we had already made a noose, or somebody had a leash or something that was there. And I just walked up. I go, just it was like the mystique of the E-Man. We got there and the dog was fine, and here you go, officer, take the dog. Man, I can't believe this. This dog was so vicious a little while ago. I said, part of the issue, it's our training, how we talk to the dogs and hypnotize them and stuff like that. Really? And you just couldn't believe that some of the cops would believe you and stuff like that. But we, like I say, there's just so much that we did in emergency. I loved every minute of it. Then I got hurt, went out to Floyd Bennett Field. Charlie had gone out about 6 or 8 months before. To the guy that I think had it transferred out or retired. So it was kind of in shambles. So it was put it back together, and only one could go. Timmy Farrow was on light duty out there.
Right.
And so he asked us both to come back, but it was one of us, not both of us. So Charlie went, and then I tore a rotator cuff in my shoulder. I was working with Pete Conlon, as a matter of fact. We were over on like the 2-5, and there was a homicide victim on the roof, and I had to lower him down through a hatch cover, and Pete was down the bottom and stuff with the morgue truck driver. And I was lowering him down, and all of a sudden I just felt a pop in my shoulder. And when I went to the surgeon, I go, Doc, it was literally dead weight. What do you mean? I go, I was lowering a homicide victim, the body in the body bag off the roof of the building. He goes, you're kidding. I go, yeah. I said, seriously happened. So now I go sick, go to the hospital at night, do the whole thing, and finally I get the clearance to go see the orthopedic surgeon. He asked me you sleep at night? I go, no. He goes, how high up can you move? I says, this is the highest I can go. He said, you got no? I said, no. I said, I can't go more than that. I said, it's just, and I got no strength like over my shoulder. So now I get the approval. I got to go get CAT scans, call them up. And so I eventually got the surgery, and I was out for a little while, back at the field. And so now I was doing it right. But now all of a sudden, like about 6 months later, all the info was coming back from the first Gulf War of all the chemical weapons that were stockpiled and what was going on and what they were doing, what Hussein was doing over there and stuff like that and all that. And it was now sprinkling down a few years later that, listen, with this terrorism going on in the Trade Center, all this different stuff, and the intel at the time from bin Laden was he was trying to purchase weapons of mass destruction, whether it be nuclear stuff or chemical weapons or biological weapons to kill large amounts of people. And so now we start getting briefed by different agencies coming in, and then we a funny story again. We get called. We were actually at EMS SOD when they were over in I want to say it was like not East New York. It was over by the meatpacking area, where all the big markets are over there and stuff. Right. And their corner was right there. It was a place. We ended up going back a whole bunch of times. Across the street, the name of the street begins with a P, was a whole bunch of junkyards. And they would burn all the time. And we would get called as hazmat because they had drums there with unknowns in it and stuff. And by hazmat, we'd have it down to a science, and they'd handle it because it was a fire and stuff. But we'd be there to help them if we had. And we're in there, and I'm with my friend was the chief and stuff like that, Paul Maniscalco. And all of a sudden we hear it come over our radio, calling the issue and hazmat to JFK, the remote satellite Port Authority fire station, report of a weapon of mass destruction. So we race out there. We call the field and stuff because we had a cell phone in the truck, and we called and said, listen, start the shower truck out and get the guys going. Forget about dinner tonight. So they come out. Everybody comes from the field. We get 9 truck gets there and stuff. They're there before us. Say, listen, I think they said there was sarin. I go, well, if there was sarin on the board the plane, I go, when it got out, I go, they'd all be dead. And that thing it would have flew right past New York and crashed somewhere in the middle of the United States somewhere. It was a 747. And I forget where it came from or any those details. So now it's like, okay, we got to search the plane. The FBI shows up, and at that time they had nothing that they could do. So it was like up to us. So we start shooting the guys up on level A. We're going up against a challenge that we didn't know. And the guys are going up and they're searching through everything, because the people were made to leave all their hand carry stuff on there. So the guys got to go through the bins. They're opening everything up. So finally, the last group goes in. We're like, all right, we should be finished in a little while. And hey, guys, You better get the bomb squad out here. Bomb squad. Yeah, this package is like ticking and buzzing and stuff. Okay, so now we call for the bomb squad. They come
Say
out.
less.
And what was that?
Say less. It's ticking and buzzing. All right.
Yeah, so it was like, okay, Central, give us the bomb squad. So now, like, everybody's ears are up in the city, press and all this stuff. The Port Authority captain is like, listen, I'm trying to keep this as small as we can. I said, listen, we're out on the runway. I said, so nobody can get out here. So the bomb squad shows up, and they suit the guys up. And I think both teams are on duty, and they came out. And it's nothing against Chief Anamone. I speak to him all the time. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago.
Right, good guy.
And so he came out, and he was on the scene. And as it turned out, the guys were going through the personal bags, and it was like a 5 horsepower sexual device. And that was the buzzing when one of the guys noticed what it was and clicked the switch. So now the bomb squad goes out. They do the X-ray. They bring it down to the room, and I think they called it a generator, but they would basically it processed the X-ray film, and they do it. The chief, being a great guy he is, but we're in like a giant classroom. There's like 40 people. He goes, hey, let me get that, and you can tell everybody in the front of the classroom what it is. Well, he takes it and puts it up on like a dry erase board. There was clips there. And we all go. And then he looks at it because no one looked at it beforehand. Puts it up there. And like the whole room, like nobody wanted to yell at like start laughing at a 4-star chief.
Exactly.
So, and the chief, being the good guy he was, turns and looks over. We're all standing in the corner and we're like, oh man, but we knew we had a good sense of humor and stuff. And he turns, he goes, I guess I should have let you guys look at it and analyze it first. And then everybody started laughing and stuff like that, but, it turned out to be nothing. But the next day, now all of a sudden, when this happened, and there was some intel behind it also, that's why whatever happened, I forget what the end story was, but now we're getting briefed by the Army Tech Escort like 3 or 4 days later out at SOD. So we called up Fire Hazmat and the Hazmat Battalion, Jack Fanning came out, and the guys were on duty in Hazmat, and they briefed us on, the sarin, all the different war stuff. And we had a good understanding of it at that point, but it just took off from there. We hired a company from the outside. They came in, did a basic like train-to-trainer class, but everything was military oriented. So we had to change it. We said, listen, we can't go in showing like Green Armies, like 100 guys. I go, we don't deal with it that way. I said, a typical fire hazmat in a small city, they're showing 5 or 6 guys. And maybe that it's secondary duty to be in an engine company or a truck company. I said, New York enjoys the fact they have a full-time hazmat company with extra guys and stuff. They got a hazmat battalion and other guys in the squads and the rescues and even now the Haztec engines and stuff are trained in it. So, we can kill the fire department, policemen can kill anything with manpower. That's the one you call a 13 and you got people on top of you to help you like that. So we invited them out. We went through the whole briefing. And then, like I said, then it just really took off. And through a misdirected phone call, it was a government, it was the Department of Defense. And Timmy Farrell took the call. And Charlie had a heart problem, so he was getting out. And so they wanted guys to be part of this program that was going to go around to 125 cities to train. And they needed guys to teach and stuff. So Charlie was using up all his time in the books. And I'm like, Charlie, what are they paying? I'm thinking, what are we going to get paid after this over? So one day he calls me, comes down to the firehouse. And this is 1997. He goes,
right before SOC. It's like before SOC.
So he goes, come down to the firehouse. I go, why? What's up? He goes, come down to the firehouse. He goes, I found out what we're going to get paid. So I come down to the firehouse, and at that time it was $45 an hour. So that was like, I'm like, you're kidding me? They're going to pay us $45 an hour to go teach somewhere and pay all the expenses? And I ended up doing 26 cities. That program turned into like 3 others. We did former Soviet Union. I went to Uzbekistan. I went to Romania. I did 8 trips to Hawaii, Pearl Harbor and Guam, Mount Camp Fuji in Japan, and and the salary went up every year. We got a new contract every year, and it really turned out good because now when I went to the Terrorist Task Force, I had a lot of connections in all the different cities. So when something happened, and the boss would go, "Anybody know anybody in Kansas City?" Yeah, I do. Get on the phone and call somebody and say, "What's going on?" And we got the true dope of what was actually taking place. So
gotcha.
it worked out really good. The task force, unfortunately, I didn't. I'm when I left, you get an out brief as far as security goes. We had top secret security clearances with a bunch of other clearances on top. I'm not trying to play the super spy stuff, but I never called them to say, listen, I'm going to be on the show and can I talk about this case and this case? So I can't really talk about too much.
No, that's fine.
I think except that it was a whole new world for me going over there from being in emergency, being in uniform, that now, I mean, I got the shield after 18 months, but it was a whole new world. I know the FBI is coming under a lot of scrutiny right now, but I work with some of the best people there and stuff. Even then, there was some, guys that tell tales and stuff like that. But I think all the agents that were handpicked for the Terrorist Task Force were really good because they were the cream of the crop. I work with the best. Actually, 40-year, I think it's 40-year reunion. They couldn't have it last year. Started in 1980. It's coming up. I don't think I'm going to go because of the COVID stuff that still affected me and everything. But some great people there. My boss ended up being one of the agents who responded when Larry Davis, when we finally got him that night. Ralphie Rinaldi. I didn't find out till I spoke to Ralph like 6 months ago. I thought my boss from the FBI, Kenny Maxwell, had put the cuffs on him. And then when they brought him over, he was crying and he was peeing, sitting in the chair. The cuffs were too tight, and Ralphie said a few choice words at him and stuff like that. But it was Ralphie that had originally handcuffed him. So I was ordered to re-handcuff him and stuff. So I did that without losing grip of him and stuff like that. And here he was. He was wanted for killing 19 people. He shot my sergeant, Eddie Coulter, up a 2 truck. And everyone and John and Mary a 3 truck and stuff like that. They got the brunt of it and stuff.
Right.
And Mary's somebody you should really have on, and John too. John is still on the job.
Well, her and I are friends on Facebook, so I'll have to reach Mary Olander, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll have to reach out to her and try to get her on the show.
Just a job with her. I mean, women take a lot of criticism. I think it was maybe my 3rd week in emergency, 4th week in emergency. I fly up the 3 truck for the midnight, so it's me and Mary in the car. So we get a job for a perp with a gun and an apartment and stuff. We go there. At the same time, we hear the truck get a hostage job. So now it's like, okay, it's just us 2. And we're there. The deputy inspector is there. And so now we're talking to the guy through the door. We finally get the door open and stuff. I think we got a key from somebody. So we're both in consultation with each other. We're talking. And there's a guy standing in the back down the hallway with the gun. And it's just me and Mary. And I got the ballistic shield. We had our handguns. We might have had a shotgun, I forget. And so I'm like, he's like, you got any more help coming? I go, boss, there's a barricade job in the South Bronx that you're going to be going to after this. I said, and there's hostages there. I go, there ain't no cavalry coming. I says, it's the 2 of us. And he's like winking because I said, we got to go in and get this guy because we got to go help them. And he's like winking at me like, do I want to go in with Mary? And I'm like, we're ready to go. Okay. I knew Mary's reputation and stuff. Right. And I'm like, we're ready to go. And he's like, you sure you don't want to wait for help and stuff? And I'm like, and I knew his name. I knew his reputation before that. I go, Inspector, we're going in. Mary, you ready? And we went in and just, we started walking in. I'm going to shoot myself. I'm going to shoot you. And he never did. I just blasted him with the shield. Mary jumps right at the top. We get the gun. We do the whole thing. It's like, here you go. Here's the gun. Goodbye. Take it easy. We need a name. Pogan, 28957 as we're running out the door. And then we go to the other job and stuff. We end up, Mary and I are on the fire escape, and the guy is inside and stuff with hostages and all that stuff. We end up, I think we were on that fire escape for 2 or 3 hours and stuff, in the middle of the night. And the guy finally gave up and stuff like that. But Mary's, she was one good cop, Okay. And Dennis, he was brought in from scuba to start Dennis is a husband who was brought in from scuba to basically get our scuba program going and stuff. And Dennis is good people too. So, but that's, I don't know where you are with time, but
we're at about the 3-hour mark.
Yeah.
I kid you not. It says 2:59:25 and counting right now.
Listen, all the guys in emergency are laughing because they know I could go on. So, it is what it is. My wife's yelling because she's got to go to bed and stuff, and I'm talking as loud as I normally do. But
sorry, Mrs. Pogan.
It's all right.
All right. Well, we'll get to the rapid fire, but Ray Ruiz did send me this photo as well just now, and it is the Ripley's page, believe it or not, and it's you guys up on the bridge.
Yeah,
so there it is.
Yeah.
It wasn't Guinness Book of World Records; it was Ripley's, and I used to read Ripley's as a kid, so that's a welcome callback. Thanks again, Ray. And now, in what is the second longest episode of Mike the New Haven podcast history, you passed Billy Kennedy. Billy Kennedy previously held second longest. He was at 2 hours and 47 minutes. The record holder is Don Sadawi with 3 hours and 11 minutes.
I believe that.
So,
I believe that.
I don't think anybody, you came close to breaking Don's record tonight, but Don's record will stand. But we'll get to the rapid fire. 5 hit and run questions from me, 5 hit and run answers from you. It'll be quick, and because you have to be quick in this segment, you got to think on your feet. You could say pass if you want, and I know you're ready, so I'll just jump right into it. You already covered funniest calls tonight, so I'll ask you. I'll switch the question up. Besides the obvious, like one truck, right? Because you worked in 2. What was your favorite truck to fly to besides one?
Actually, any truck, because whenever you went, you learned another part of the city. And I was a Manhattan guy for my EMS time and as a cop, and then an emergency. So I didn't know Brooklyn that well. I could get myself around from knowing from my old buffing days, but any truck. I didn't have a favorite. Wherever they sent me, I loved it. You learn something all the time, and you work with different guys all the time, do it different ways. So.
Second, besides the Hearst tool, obviously using it in the volleys, using it in ESU, favorite tool on the truck?
Well, I was instrumental in getting the rabbit tool when it was called the Clemens tool, and I saw it at a fire convention I was at, and a little hydraulic tool that you pump to push the door open. So I got stuck because I was the big guy to take the door all the time. If you've been to 2 truck, you sort of ram, here we come.
Yep.
I had to carry that up, plus take a sledgehammer and a Halligan and stuff like that with me, because I wanted to be prepared that that wouldn't go through the door, how many locks or whatever. But when we got the rabbit tool, the smallest guy in the unit could just put it in the door, pump it, and the door would pop right open. So I got to say the rabbit tool, because it changed things for me. I could now be on the entry, and I did forget one other funny story. We'll go on, maybe an hour, break the record. But we get a job, it's a hostage rescue, but the problem is it's a perp. It's a drug gang who's got another drug gang member, a competitor, held hostage. And they came to the cops for help. So if Charlie Rupert is watching, or Kurt Wargo, they were on the job, and I forget who else. Henry Medina.
Trying to get Kurt on the show, too, for that matter. I messaged him on Facebook a few times.
We get the call. Okay, when we go up, the CI is going to point the door out. We go up. That's the door. Somebody else takes the door. I'm the first one in. I got the bunker. I got my handgun out. Go through the door, and I see a guy is out the window. He's going out the kitchen window onto the fire escape. I go, and I just yelled, I go, one out the kitchen window, going out to the fire escape. And I turn, and I start going to the second room. It's got these French doors, and it's like something out of a movie, Scarface. The guy is tied to a chair. The chainsaw is right next to him. And there's the perp guarding him with a handgun in his hand. And I'm about to shoot, and the guy starts coming towards me. So I'm like, all right, the hell with this. And at the same time, Charlie Rupert, who was behind me, he chases a third perp, and he goes, out the window. And it was a corner apartment. So it happened so fast. As he's saying that, it's actually as I was going to the room. So I'm like, okay, 1, 2, 3 perps we got so far. Charlie's got the third guy, and he goes out the window. And all of a sudden, and Charlie is one of the funniest people in the world. He goes, check that. He's on the ground doing the chicken. There was no fire escape. The guy just dove out the window from the 5th floor.
Yeah.
Just missing Captain Wargo, who was down on the ground to coordinate, what was going on and stuff like that, and call for more help if it was needed. Just missed him. He happened to look up when he said out the window, and he moved over. The guy slammed into the ground. But now I got the guy I hit him with the shield, knock him down, and I'm laughing so hard. But I'm wrestling a guy with a 9mm handgun in his hand who had a chainsaw that was going to cut this guy up and kill him, and I'm laughing. So I think he must have looked at me and thought I was an EDP, and he just like threw the gun, and then I just pistol whipped him with my gun and stuff like that. And now I get him up, boom, drop the shield, cuff. We had the wire ties, we wire tie him. But the first guy goes down the stairs, goes into another apartment. And so now Charlie, they're running down, Henry and Charlie are running down the stairs, like trying to watch him. He's seeing them running down the stairs because it was an H-type and you could look in from the front. He finally gets to the bottom, which was a covered walkway out over the alcove. And he goes into apartment. They said, okay, he just went into this apartment. They go figure it out. Here it is, the first apartment. Now he's got a family hostage on a Sunday morning. So, boom, now we're there. We're calling everybody and their brother. Long story short, funny thing with Henry, we all thought he spoke Spanish, okay? Like really good Spanish. Henry, tell the guy to come out. He's like, hey, come out. Henry, tell him in Spanish. He goes, I don't know Spanish. I know Spanglish. I'm like, oh, God. So now, but we finally get the guy to come out. They got him. They give up. But the husband is standing. He went to the bakery. So he's standing with the bakery box. While he goes out, his family's taken hostage with this whole thing. So they're standing there, and Charlie was always one step ahead. So the detectives are there, the squad's there. They got the guy the whole bit. We turn him over to him. He goes, hey, you may want to get the husband out of here. Nah, no big deal. Well, as they walk in the perp past the husband, he drops the box of donuts and just squares off and clocks him. And the guy, like limp, and Charlie goes, I told you so, like that. And now, like, we're just laughing and shaking our head at the squad because they didn't listen to us, They didn't. The father was right there. It pops him, that was it. But again, okay, go back to the quick thing there, but it just reminded me of that job, and it was just, it was one of them crazy jobs and dangerous, but we walked away from it, so.
There you go. Third favorite cop show or cop movie?
You know what? Probably, I always used to watch, the cops on TV and stuff. And when they were in New York, I was actually on it, never saw it again. I've been minding my P's and Q's tonight, but I didn't that day when they got me on tape. The guy was entangled in some barbed wire or razor wire. And I'm just yanking at the guy. And the light that I thought was just a backlight on the building was the Klieg light from the camera. And I'm cursing like a drunken sailor. So all you saw on the tape is beep, beep, beep. And I'm like pulling the guy through the wire. And you hear beep, 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 beep. And I'm like, well, I guess they'll never show that again, But I got to say, because it goes back, it was just before I came on the job was the movie Prince of the City.
Yep.
And that was an awakening for me, like seeing the corruption that was there and all that type of stuff. And here I am waiting to come on the job. And my wife said, geez, do you really want to do that? I was a lieutenant in EMS. And I go, listen, it's better for the both of us. It's 20-year retirement, the whole bit. But Prince of the City kind of really, shook me up a little bit seeing that, and realizing, okay, part of it's Hollywood, but part of it was, that's what it was back then. I lived through watching the NAP Commission hearings, and then we had the Mullen hearings when we went through. So, actually the Mullen hearings were later, but just remembering back the NAP Commission, and then my father saying how many guys got locked up and guys that he knew. And back then he goes, the best movie ever made was Go to Harbor. That was it. But yeah, Prince of the City probably. Yeah.
Fourth favorite bar or restaurant, New York City?
Well, it's not there anymore, but it's basically the first time I met my wife outside of the hospital. It was oh man, now I can't. It was right at 50. It was right across from Studio 54. It was like the Ye Old Tavern or something like that. The Triple Inn. I'm sorry. No longer there, but I have to put that as a favorite because that's where I kind of got to know my wife going there after 4 to 12s and stuff. And I haven't been in the city. If I had to say a place to eat that I know it still is, Patsy's up in Harlem. I love their pizza. I think on the app they come in at like 9.3 on El Presidente's pizza one bite day.
Yes, Mr. Portnoy.
Which reminds me, I'm going to have to come up and meet you for pizza up in New Haven since that's supposed to be the pizza capital of the world.
You let me know when, my friend.
Okay. You
We
got
will
it.
absolutely go down to Worcester Street. And fifth and finally, if you can grab a new E-man or E-woman fresh out of STS, given your experience as an emergency, what would you tell them?
Exactly what was told to me by John Elta. Keep your eyes open, keep your mouth closed, and keep your ears open, and you'll learn something every day. And you'll either learn it from a good or bad life lesson, or from another E-man that is one step ahead of you. But you'll learn something every day. And I went by that my whole time in the job. I still go by it with the volleys. I still tell, and I hate to say kids, but they are kids to me. I could be grandfather to half of them, but just listen and learn. And in emergency, keep your mouth shut, keep your eyes open, your ears open, and you learn every day. Like John said to me, like I said.
Well, what an episode tonight. I think, like I said, you have the second longest now. We're at the 3 hour, 10-minute mark. So you just missed breaking Don's record.
If my son is watching, which I don't think he is, because he has to be in on the 135th Street Bridge. He's an iron worker. He's got to be in there at 6 in the morning. Right. I think he's at bed at 7. He would be sitting there howling and laughing because, as he said in the thing, you better make it 3 hours because he's got plenty of stories. So.
And he was right. And we did. And we did. Don's record, by the way, 3:11:21. And we're at 3:10:25. So you missed it by less than a minute. So thanks, Pat. Stick around. We'll say goodbye off the air. Coming up next on the Mike Dinoavid podcast, I'll figure out the nightcap. I don't have a guest for the nightcap yet. Hopefully I'll have one by the time the night's over. But Duty Ron, you know him on YouTube, over 100,000 subscribers, former housing cop, former NYPD detective of 21 years between both departments. He will be on for the first show of a doubleheader at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Friday for another volume of the E-Man inside the NYPD's emergency service unit. Kenny Bowen, Sergeant Emergency, and a cop in emergency too. So that should be a good show with him. He's going to have a tough act to follow. So is Ron for that matter.
And his brother and his dad on the job too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I forgot about that. His dad was an emergency as well. So with that being considered and said, on behalf of retired E-Man Pat Pogan, I am Mike Colón, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your night. Now, hold on, everybody. I won't get off the air just yet, because hang on. I have to say, just in breaking news, Pat has broken the record. It is now at 3 hours, 11 minutes, and 47 seconds. So Don Sadawi is no longer the record holder. It is now Pat Pogan. And on that note, we can say goodnight.
Anybody that knows me is not surprised.
There you go. So now I can say goodbye, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.